They thrived for centuries, building cities of stone and earth, weaving intricate cultures, and mastering the land with astonishing skill. And then, they vanished. No trace of war, no signs of invasion, just silence. Entire civilizations, flourishing in the heart of the Americas, disappeared as if swallowed by time itself. What could erase the work of thousands, leaving only ruins and whispered mysteries behind? Imagine walking through sprawling ceremonial centers, their walls etched with symbols whose meaning is lost to history. Imagine the sudden absence of entire populations, leaving behind colossal pyramids, sprawling terraces, and vanished roads that once connected vibrant societies. The questions mount. Were they victims of disease or unseen human conflict? Or did something far more enigmatic unfold, hidden in the folds of history? In this journey, we will peel back the layers of time, step into the shadows of lost civilizations, and confront the haunting enigma of those who shaped the Americas, and then disappeared without a trace. Welcome to the story of a mystery that still refuses to die. Nestled along the arid northern coast of what is now Peru, the Lambayeque region stretches under a sky of pale, relentless sun. The landscape is deceptively quiet. Rolling sand dunes meet the distant, restless Pacific, and the wind whispers across the remnants of ancient adobe structures, worn smooth by centuries of desert storms. Here, the Sicán civilization once flourished, leaving behind a world that seems both intimate and incomprehensibly vast. It is a place where golden masks lie buried beneath the soil, their faces frozen in serene, otherworldly expressions, and massive ceremonial platforms rise from the earth like echoes of forgotten power. The Sicán, or Lambayeque culture, thrived between roughly 750 and 1375 CE. They were master metallurgists, sculpting gold into masks, scepters, and jewelry that reveal a sophistication that still astonishes modern scholars. Archaeologists have uncovered vast burial sites, including the enigmatic Lord of Sicán, whose tomb, intact for centuries, yielded treasures of unimaginable skill and artistry. Yet for all their accomplishments, the Sicán remain shrouded in mystery. Unlike their contemporaries in the Andes, few records survive, and their cities, once bustling centers of trade and ritual, now lie mostly in silent decay. The objects themselves seem to resist full comprehension. Take the iconic Tumi knives, ceremonial blades cast in gold with precision so refined it suggests knowledge of metallurgy advanced for the time. Or the funerary masks, stylized with exaggerated features and intricate symbols whose meaning is still debated. Some see in these symbols religious codices, others suggest astronomical references, or even maps of the unseen spiritual world. What ideas guided the artisans who shaped these objects? What visions did they hope to capture, and what truths were lost when their society faded? Even the question of their decline is uncertain. Theories abound. Environmental change may have disrupted agriculture and water systems, weakening the foundation of Sicán society. Internal conflict could have fractured political structures. Some suggest incursions from neighboring cultures played a role, while others point to disease as a silent, unseen hand-shaping history. And yet, none of these explanations fully account for the sudden disappearance of such a vibrant and technologically skilled civilization. Could there have been factors we cannot measure, events invisible to the archaeological record, that determined their fate? In the desert sands and quiet valleys, fragments of their lives remain stubbornly tangible. Walls etched with geometric patterns, ceremonial plazas aligned with the rising sun, and burial goods that seem almost deliberately preserved for discovery, all hint at a civilization that sought permanence even in the face of mortality. And yet, The people themselves, their voices, and the stories they carried are gone. We see the reflection of their world only through what they left behind, and in those remnants, the questions multiply. Why did such innovation arise here, in this narrow strip of desert? How did these people connect with the broader currents of pre-Columbian culture across the Andes? And perhaps most hauntingly, what truths remain hidden beneath the sands, waiting for the patient eye to uncover them? As we trace the faint lines of walls and corridors long abandoned, examining the artifacts that survived, one cannot escape the sense of a culture deliberately leaving traces without revealing all. The Sicán challenge our understanding of history, skill, and human ambition. In their art and architecture, in the gold that glimmers silently beneath centuries of earth, we glimpse a civilization that sought to touch eternity, and in doing so left a question that still echoes across the desert. Who were the Sicán, and why did they disappear so completely, yet so quietly, from the world they once shaped? From the sun-baked deserts of northern Peru, we now journey across thousands of miles to the low, wet plains of what is now northeastern Louisiana. Here, along the gentle curves of the Mississippi River and its tributaries, lies Poverty Point, a sprawling complex of earthen mounds and ridges that rises subtly from the landscape, yet speaks of astonishing ambition and organization. At first glance, it is easy to miss. Rolling terraces and concentric ridges blend almost seamlessly with the surrounding floodplain. But as one studies the layout, the scale becomes undeniable. These are not natural formations. They are the deliberate work of human hands, shaped with precision and intent, stretching across 6 square kilometers. The Poverty Point culture thrived between roughly 1700 and 1100 BCE, long before the more famous mound-building societies of the Mississippi Valley. Its inhabitants left no written records, yet they engineered monumental earthworks with an expertise that still puzzles modern archaeologists. The largest mound, known as Mound A, rises nearly 22 meters above the surrounding plain, built from hundreds of thousands of cubic meters of clay, soil, and shell, transported entirely by human effort. How did small, dispersed communities coordinate such construction without the hierarchical systems we usually associate with large-scale projects? Artifacts recovered from the site deepen the mystery. Intricately crafted stone tools, large clay cooking balls, and exotic materials imported from hundreds of miles away hint at far-reaching trade networks and social complexity previously unimagined for this period in North America. Birds' effigy figures, carefully placed in mounds, suggest ritual significance, yet their precise purpose remains unclear. Were they markers of cosmological beliefs, symbols of clan identity, or part of ceremonies now lost to time? Each find adds a piece to the puzzle while simultaneously deepening the enigma. The construction of Poverty Point itself raises questions that standard explanations struggle to answer. Unlike later mound-building societies, there is no evidence of a centralized government or hereditary elite directing the labor. Some scholars propose seasonal gatherings or collective effort for ritual purposes. Others suggest more speculative ideas. Did the layout of the ridges encode astronomical knowledge? Could the concentric designs be maps of rivers, trade routes, or spiritual realms? And if so, why would such sophisticated planning arise in a culture otherwise described as hunter-gatherers? Even the eventual decline of Poverty Point is shrouded in uncertainty. Around 1100 BCE, the site was largely abandoned, and its people dispersed. Environmental changes, resource depletion, or social shifts may have contributed, yet no single explanation fully accounts for the abruptness or scale of the departure. Some mounds were later revisited and partially reshaped, suggesting that even after the culture faded, its memory lingered in the landscape. And still, much remains buried, literally and figuratively, beneath the floodplain, preserved by layers of silt and time. Standing on the ridges today, one can sense both the ingenuity and the mystery of those who lived here. The earth beneath your feet was sculpted with care, imbued with meaning we may only glimpse. Trade routes that spanned hundreds of miles, tools crafted with skill, and ceremonial spaces arranged with intention, all speak to a society that was both extraordinary and ephemeral. And yet, like the Sicán of the distant Andes, the people of Poverty Point vanished, leaving behind monumental traces and unanswerable questions. How did they organize their world so effectively? Why did they leave it? And what secrets remain, waiting silently beneath the earth, ready to challenge everything we think we know about ancient North America? From the flat plains and riverbanks of the Mississippi Valley, our journey now winds southward into the rugged, sun-drenched valleys of Oaxaca in what is modern-day southern Mexico. Here, amid steep mountains and fertile valleys, lies Monte Alban, the heart of the Zapotec Civilization. A city perched atop a high plateau, rising abruptly from the surrounding landscape like a vision carved in stone. The air is thin, crisp, and carries the faint scent of earth and history. The terraces, plazas, and pyramids are silent now, yet they speak of a people whose achievements were extraordinary, whose influence shaped the region for centuries, and whose ultimate disappearance continues to intrigue scholars. The Zapotec Civilization emerged as early as 700 BCE and flourished for more than a millennium. Monte Alban itself became a center of political, religious, and cultural life, dominating the Oaxaca Valley with its carefully planned streets, monumental architecture, and intricate tombs. From these heights, the city looks outward, as if surveying the lives below. It was a place of ceremony and governance, where rulers displayed their power through architecture, art, and ritual. Yet for all the order and sophistication evident in stone and bone, many aspects of Zapotec society remain shrouded in mystery. Archaeologists have uncovered tombs that reveal remarkable wealth and craftsmanship, carved jade ornaments, elaborate funerary urns, and ceremonial masks. Some tombs contained multiple layers of interred individuals, suggesting complex ritual practices and hierarchies we can only partially reconstruct. The Zapotec developed one of Mesoamerica's earliest writing systems, a series of glyphs carved into stone or painted on ceramics. These symbols offer tantalizing glimpses of history, lineage, and belief, yet large portions remain undeciphered. What stories did these glyphs once tell? Were they chronicles of rulers, records of astronomical observation, or guides for spiritual journeys? The answers are fragmentary, leaving us to wonder at the knowledge that has been lost to time. Monte Alban itself presents puzzles that continue to challenge explanation. The city's layout seems both deliberate and enigmatic. Plazas oriented to celestial events, terraces cut with precise geometry, and buildings whose purposes are still debated. Some suggest astronomical alignments connected to agricultural cycles or ritual calendars. Others see symbolic representations of sacred mountains, ancestors, or cosmological concepts. How much of the city's design was functional, and how much was intended to convey ideas beyond immediate comprehension? And if much of it is symbolic, what can it reveal about the Zapotec worldview, their understanding of life, death, and the universe? Trade and interaction further deepen the intrigue. Artifacts at Monte Alban demonstrate connections with distant regions of Mesoamerica, including the Gulf Coast and the Valley of Mexico. Exotic materials such as jade, obsidian, and cacao crossed vast distances, indicating a network of exchange and influence. Yet despite this reach, the civilization eventually declined. By the time the Spanish arrived in the 16th century, the Zapotec culture was fragmented, their cities diminished, and their political dominance reduced. What caused such a decline? Was it internal strife, environmental pressures, or competition with neighboring cultures? Or were there subtler forces at play, social upheaval, epidemics, or shifts in belief systems, that left only traces in stone and bone? Even the tombs themselves raise questions that defy easy answers. Buried deep beneath the ceremonial platforms, some contain unusual skeletal arrangements or artifacts that seem out of place, hinting at rituals whose meaning has been lost. Were these objects intended to protect the dead, to communicate with the spiritual world, or to convey messages to the living? And why do some elite tombs appear more deliberately hidden or isolated than others, as though guarding secrets the city itself sought to preserve? Standing among the terraces and plazas today, one can feel both awe and quiet unease. The scale and sophistication of Monte Alban suggest a society that understood engineering, astronomy, art, and governance with remarkable clarity. And yet, for all this mastery, so much remains uncertain. What drove the Zapotec to construct such an imposing city in a seemingly remote valley? How did they maintain social cohesion over centuries in the face of external pressures and internal challenges? And most hauntingly, what circumstances led to the gradual fading of this civilization, leaving behind only ruins, glyphs, and artifacts that whisper but never speak fully? In exploring the Zapotec, we confront a civilization that is both known and unknowable. The patterns of their cities, the artistry of their tombs, and the mysterious glyphs carved in stone invite us to piece together a story that is only partially written. And yet, each answer raises new questions, suggesting that even as we uncover the physical remnants of their world, much of the human story, motives, beliefs, and experiences remains hidden, buried beneath centuries of earth and memory. What secrets lie still beneath Monte Alban, waiting for patient eyes to uncover them? And what can these remnants teach us about the fragility and resilience of human civilizations? From the high valleys of Oaxaca, where stone terraces and ancient glyphs whisper of the Zapotec, our journey moves further south along the Pacific coast of South America to the arid plains of northern Peru. Here, where the desert meets the cold, fog-laden waters of the Humboldt Current, lies the remnants of an empire built of mud, stone, and ambition, the Chimú. The city of Chanchan rises subtly from the ochre sands, a vast labyrinth of walls, plazas, and ceremonial platforms that stretches across more than 20 square kilometers, the largest adobe city ever constructed in the Americas. Standing among these ruins today, one is immediately struck by the scale, the meticulous organization, and the eerie quiet that pervades the place, as if the city itself is holding its breath, guarding the secrets of a vanished civilization. The Chimú civilization thrived between approximately 900 and 1470 CE, flourishing along the northern coast with a sophisticated mastery of irrigation, metallurgy, and urban planning. The sprawling city of Chanchan was the political and spiritual heart of the empire, a place where rulers displayed their authority not through stone temples, but through vast walled compounds, each containing ceremonial courtyards, storage rooms, and residential areas for the elite. Every wall is decorated with intricate reliefs, depicting fish, birds, waves, and geometric motifs that hint at the close relationship between the Chimú and their environment. But while these designs reveal a society attuned to symbolism and aesthetics, their deeper meanings remain elusive. Were these patterns purely decorative, or did they encode ritual knowledge, social hierarchies, or cosmological ideas we are yet to decipher? The Chimú were master artisans, shaping gold, silver, and copper into objects of astonishing intricacy. Jewelry, ceremonial knives, and elaborate headdresses demonstrate both technical skill and cultural significance. Even more remarkable is their control over water. In one of the driest regions of the continent, They engineered irrigation channels and reservoirs that sustained cities, agriculture, and massive populations, demonstrating an advanced understanding of hydraulics and land management. How did they achieve such precision in an environment so unforgiving, without the technologies of the modern era? And what might these innovations reveal about their knowledge of the natural world, their adaptability, and their priorities as a society? Yet, despite their ingenuity, the Chimú ultimately vanished. In 1470, the empire was conquered by the expanding Inca, its cities absorbed into a larger realm. But even under Inca rule, Chanchan was gradually abandoned, and much of the city's population dispersed. Scholars debate the reasons. Did internal conflict weaken the empire before the Inca arrived? Were ecological pressures, such as drought or floods, tipping points that undermined the civilization's foundations? Or could disease and social upheaval have contributed, leaving an empire that once thrived suddenly fractured and depopulated? Some researchers point to the possibility that there were even more subtle forces at work. Shifts in religious practice, trade disruptions, or unseen societal tensions that the archaeological record can only hint at. Walking through the empty courtyards of Chanchan, one cannot escape the feeling of absence. The lives that once filled these walls, the ceremonial chants that echoed across plazas, and the labor of thousands shaping mud into monumental structures. Some compounds seem deliberately isolated, walled off from others, suggesting complex social stratification and ceremonial practice. And yet, despite the clarity of the architecture, the people themselves remain largely invisible. Their voices are lost, and the meaning of their symbols only partially understood. How much of Chimú society, their rituals, beliefs, and ambitions, remains buried beneath the sand and memory? The Chimú's relationship with the natural world adds another layer of mystery. The reliefs that decorate their walls often depict marine life, waves, and abstract motifs. Were these symbolic representations of spiritual beliefs or practical guides to fishing, navigation, and seasonal cycles? The precision of their urban planning suggests they understood the rhythms of the river, the desert, and the tides with an almost uncanny sophistication. And yet, in the end, their mastery could not prevent the empire's dissolution. Is it possible that we are only glimpsing a fraction of their knowledge, lost records, oral histories, and cultural practices buried forever beneath the sands of time? Standing amid Chanchan's sun-baked walls, it is impossible not to be humbled by the civilization's scale and ambition. The Chimú left behind a city that dwarfs modern towns, a record of ingenuity that challenges our assumptions about pre-Columbian societies, and a lingering question. How could such a well-organized and technologically advanced civilization disappear so thoroughly, leaving only walls, reliefs, and scattered artifacts to speak for an entire people? And as we trace their footsteps along the desert plains, we are left to wonder, what more lies hidden beneath the sand, waiting to reveal the full story of a civilization that once shaped the coast, harnessed the desert, and then, like so many others across the Americas, vanished without leaving a living witness behind? From the sprawling adobe city of Chanchan and the vanished might of the Chimú, we move slightly south along the arid northern coast of Peru, to a land of steep river valleys, towering pyramids, and wind-swept plains, the domain of the Moche Civilization. Here, along the banks of the Moche and Chicama rivers, rises a landscape dotted with monumental huacas, or ceremonial pyramids, their sun-baked adobe walls casting long shadows over the valleys below. Even in ruin, these structures exude a sense of precision and authority, as if the very earth had been sculpted to honor deities, rulers, and rituals that the modern eye can barely comprehend. The desert wind carries whispers of a people whose artistry and ambition rivaled the greatest civilizations of the ancient world, and whose disappearance remains a haunting enigma. The Moche thrived between roughly 100 and 800 CE, predating the Chimú by several centuries, yet leaving behind a cultural footprint equally striking. Unlike other Andean civilizations that favored sprawling urban centers, the Moche organized themselves around monumental ceremonial complexes, with Huaca del Sol and Huaca de la Luna standing as testaments to both religious devotion and political authority. These pyramids were constructed with millions of adobe bricks, stacked with meticulous care, their interiors revealing intricate murals, burial chambers, and ritual spaces. What inspired such monumental effort in a harsh, arid environment? And how did the Moche coordinate labor, resources, and religious authority to produce such enduring works? The Moche are perhaps best known for their artistry, particularly their ceramics, which vividly depict scenes of ritual, warfare, and daily life. Portrait vases reveal faces with uncanny realism, capturing expressions, hairstyles, and even the subtleties of human emotion. Yet among these lifelike depictions are scenes that challenge our understanding: sacrificial ceremonies, ritual combat, and elaborate religious rites, each hinting at a worldview both sophisticated and, at times, disturbing. Were these artifacts intended as educational tools, religious guides, or political propaganda? And how much of their symbolism has been lost, leaving modern observers to interpret fragments of a society whose beliefs were intricately woven into every object and structure they left behind? The Moche also mastered the manipulation of their environment. Through complex irrigation canals, they harnessed the seasonal rivers of the arid coast, turning desert plains into fertile farmland capable of sustaining large populations. Their engineering was precise, adaptive, and remarkably resilient, yet it existed in a landscape vulnerable to the forces of nature. Some researchers suggest that catastrophic El Niño events, sudden severe floods or droughts, may have destabilized Moche society, undermining agriculture, trade, and political structures. Could such natural upheavals have played a decisive role in the civilization's decline? Or did human factors, such as social unrest, warfare between competing elites, or overextension of resources, contribute to their sudden disappearance? Archaeological findings continue to deepen the mystery. The discovery of elaborate tombs, such as the Lord of Sicán, reveals a society with hierarchical complexity, where rulers were buried with an astonishing array of wealth, including gold, silver, and ceremonial regalia. Yet the mortality of these rulers, often interred with human sacrifices, suggests a worldview that intertwined power, religion, and mortality in ways that remain opaque to modern understanding. What did these burials signify to the Moche themselves? Were they acts of devotion, displays of political dominance, or attempts to ensure cosmic balance? Even the Moche's urban and ceremonial layout invites questions. The Huacas rise along lines that may align with the sun, the stars, or the courses of rivers, hinting at astronomical knowledge and spiritual intention. Were these structures designed to mirror the heavens, guide agricultural cycles, or encode mythic cosmologies into the landscape itself? And if so, what stories and knowledge were lost when the Moche civilization abruptly faded from the region, leaving their monumental works to endure as silent witnesses to a vanished world? Walking through the ruins today, one feels the weight of both human ingenuity and transience. The adobe walls, now weathered and fractured, carry the echoes of ritual chants, the clamor of markets, and the disciplined labor of artisans and farmers. The artifacts they left behind, ceramics, metalwork, textiles, offer glimpses of a society that was as complex as it was fragile. And yet, despite the clarity of their material culture, the Moche themselves remain largely invisible. How did such a sophisticated civilization, with its engineering, artistry, and intricate social structures, ultimately vanish from history? What truths lie buried beneath the sands, and how much remains hidden, waiting for discovery. In contemplating the Moche, we confront a civilization that was at once brilliant, enigmatic, and ephemeral. Their achievements endure, yet their disappearance challenges our assumptions about resilience, adaptation, and the fragility of complex societies. And as we trace the ruins of their pyramids and study the artifacts they left behind, we are left with a single, persistent question. How could a civilization so skilled, so attentive to both the spiritual and the practical, simply vanish, leaving behind monuments, art, and mysteries that continue to captivate and confound us centuries after their last people walked these plains? From the sun-scorched valleys and monumental pyramids of the northern Peruvian coast, where the Moche once thrived and then vanished, our exploration now shifts across the continent to the vast riverine landscapes of what is now the southeastern United States. Here, rolling floodplains, winding rivers, and dense forests cradle the remnants of a civilization whose scale, complexity, and sudden disappearance continue to intrigue historians and archaeologists alike, the Mississippian culture. Even today, the earth itself carries the imprint of their presence. Towering mounds, carefully arranged plazas, and long-abandoned settlement patterns that hint at a society both sophisticated and enigmatic. Walking among these ancient landscapes, one cannot help but feel the weight of human ambition, as if the land itself remembers the people who once shaped it. The Mississippian culture flourished roughly between 800 and 1600 CE, spanning much of the central and southeastern United States. Their society was defined by monumental earthen constructions, platform mounds that could rise more than 30 meters, ceremonial plazas aligned with astronomical events, and complex village layouts, suggesting carefully orchestrated urban planning. The largest of these settlements, Cahokia, near modern-day St. Louis, was a metropolis of the pre-Columbian Americas, home to tens of thousands of people at its peak. From the ground, the mounds appear as gentle rises in the landscape, but their sheer scale and organization betray a civilization capable of remarkable engineering feats. How did societies without metal tools or draft animals mobilize thousands of people to shape the earth with such precision and uniformity? Artifacts recovered from Mississippian sites provide glimpses of daily life, spiritual practice, and social hierarchy. Intricately crafted pottery, shell gorgets, stone effigies, and copper ornaments suggest both extensive trade networks and highly skilled craftsmanship. Exotic materials, some transported hundreds of miles, indicate connections that spanned vast regions of North America. And yet, for all the evidence of material culture, many aspects of Mississippian belief systems remain mysterious. What rituals were conducted atop the mounds? How did the society structure power and maintain cohesion across such expansive territories? Certain ceremonial artifacts, such as engraved shell cups and effigy pipes, hint at cosmological understanding and ritual practice, but their full significance remains largely speculative. The layout of Mississippian cities further deepens the intrigue. Mounds are often arranged around central plazas, sometimes in precise geometric patterns or aligned to cardinal directions, suggesting careful planning informed by astronomy, religion, or both. Some scholars argue that the mounds themselves represented a microcosm of the universe, with each level corresponding to different realms of existence, from the underworld to the celestial. Others suggest that mound placement reflects social hierarchy, with elite compounds overlooking residential areas, yet other interpretations propose connections to watercourses, seasonal cycles, or trade routes. Each theory offers a window into Mississippian life, yet none fully captures the totality of a society that is gone, leaving only earthworks and artifacts to testify to its complexity. Despite their apparent sophistication, the Mississippian culture eventually declined. By the time Europeans arrived in North America, many major centers had been abandoned, and population densities had dropped dramatically. Historians suggest a variety of factors: ecological stress from soil depletion, climate variability and flooding, social upheaval arising from internal conflict or competition among elites, and disease or demographic pressures. Some evidence points to sudden and violent disruptions, while other signs indicate gradual decline over generations. And yet, the precise causes remain elusive, leaving scholars to wonder whether multiple factors converged, or if there are aspects of this decline that have left no trace at all. Could the collapse have been influenced by spiritual or cultural transformations invisible to the archaeological record? Shifts in belief systems or leadership that reshaped communities from within? The mounds themselves remain silent witnesses to these questions. Rising from the plains, they are at once architectural feats and repositories of memory. Burials found within contain both commoners and elites, often accompanied by ritual objects whose symbolism challenges interpretation. Some mounds preserve evidence of repeated rebuilding, suggesting long-term ceremonial significance. Others show abrupt cessation, as if construction, and perhaps the society that built it, stopped suddenly. What decisions, crises, or events prompted such dramatic shifts? And how much of their story remains concealed beneath layers of soil, vegetation, and centuries of human activity? Exploring Mississippian sites today, the experience is both humbling and disorienting. The landscape itself bears the imprint of human hands, yet the people who created it have vanished. The mounds, artifacts, and settlement patterns evoke a civilization that was intelligent, creative, and socially complex, yet the voices of its inhabitants are lost to history. How did they perceive the world around them? How did they interpret the cycles of nature, the movement of the stars, and the course of their rivers? And most profoundly, how could a society so advanced, so capable of organizing labor, trade, and ritual across vast territories, disappear almost entirely, leaving only subtle traces for modern observers to reconstruct? The story of the Mississippian culture invites reflection not only on human ingenuity, but also on fragility, the precariousness of civilizations in the face of environmental, social, and cultural pressures. Their mounds stand as monuments to ambition, planning, and belief, yet their abandonment challenges assumptions about permanence and resilience. And as we walk among these ancient earthworks, touch the pottery, and gaze across the plazas where countless people once lived, worked, and worshipped, we are left with a profound sense of mystery. How much remains hidden beneath the soil, beneath the forest canopy, and within the echoes of a civilization that rose, thrived, and then vanished, leaving us only questions that continue to linger, unanswered, across time. From the riverine plains and monumental mounds of the Mississippian world, we journey westward into the rugged high desert of the American Southwest, where the land stretches in endless mesas, canyons, and arid valleys. Amid this stark, seemingly inhospitable landscape lies Chaco Canyon, a place of sun-bleached sandstone cliffs, narrow washes, and expansive plateaus. At first glance, the desert appears silent and empty, yet beneath its sands and along its canyons are the remnants of a civilization whose scale, sophistication, and sudden disappearance continue to challenge modern understanding. Here, the ancestral Puebloans, often called the Chacoans, built monumental settlements that stand as enduring testimony to human ingenuity, adaptation, and mystery. Between roughly 900 and 1150 CE, Chaco Canyon became the heart of a complex society, a cultural and ceremonial hub that influenced a vast region spanning hundreds of miles. The people of Chaco engineered multi-storied buildings from sandstone, known as great houses, some containing hundreds of rooms, kivas, and intricate courtyards. These structures were aligned with astronomical phenomena, the solstices, equinoxes, and lunar cycles, hinting at a sophisticated understanding of the sky and its rhythms. How did a society without modern instruments or written language coordinate construction on such a massive scale, precisely aligned with celestial events? And what purpose did these alignments serve? Religious devotion, agricultural guidance, or perhaps a symbolic representation of their cosmology encoded into the very earth? Chaco Canyon's great houses were connected by an extensive network of roads, some remarkably straight and stretching for tens of kilometers across rugged terrain. These roads suggest not only engineering skill, but also political and social organization of a level difficult to reconcile with the relatively small populations inferred from archaeological evidence. Were these thoroughfares used for trade, pilgrimages, or ceremonial processions? Did they represent a centralized authority guiding the lives of distant communities, or were they spiritual pathways linking sacred landscapes? The answers remain elusive, buried beneath centuries of erosion, sand, and the passage of time. Artifacts recovered from Chaco Canyon provide glimpses of a culture deeply connected to craft, ritual, and far-reaching exchange networks. Pottery, stone tools, turquoise, and shells from distant coasts reveal a society linked to regions hundreds of kilometers away, suggesting trade, communication, and shared ceremonial traditions. Yet, for all their skill and connectivity, the Chacoans left few written records, leaving modern observers to interpret meaning from fragments, ruins, and subtle landscape features. How did they conceptualize leadership, religion, and social cohesion? And what unrecorded knowledge vanished along with them? Environmental factors appear to have played a significant role in Chacoan life, and perhaps in their decline. Dendrochronology, the study of tree rings, reveals cycles of severe drought during the height of Chacoan construction, suggesting that climate may have stressed food production, water supply, and the broader ecosystem. But drought alone may not fully explain the sudden and extensive abandonment of Chaco Canyon around the mid-12th century. Some archaeologists suggest that social upheaval, internal conflict, or shifts in ceremonial practices could have contributed to the depopulation of these monumental centers. And still, there are subtler, more speculative questions. Did changing spiritual beliefs or political alliances lead to voluntary migration? Did unseen pressures, disease, famine, or cumulative social stress combine to reshape a civilization that had mastered both desert and sky? The canyon itself holds additional mysteries. Certain great houses contain carefully constructed kivas, subterranean ceremonial chambers, whose orientation, size, and number suggest ritual importance beyond mere domestic use. Other architectural features, including massive masonry walls, carefully crafted stonework, and precisely planned plazas, indicate knowledge of engineering and geometry that continues to inspire awe. Some scholars propose that the Chacoans encoded astronomical knowledge, ritual cycles, or even cosmological principles into the arrangement of buildings and roads. Others suggest that certain sites may have served as pilgrimage destinations or ceremonial centers linking distant communities across the arid Southwest. Yet the true purpose and the full scope of cultural meaning remains tantalizingly out of reach. Even the patterns of abandonment are mysterious. By the 12th century, many great houses were deserted, their roads left unmaintained, and ceremonial activity diminished. Yet scattered evidence suggests that descendants of the Chacoans migrated to surrounding regions, influencing later Pueblo cultures. How much of Chacoan knowledge, tradition, and spiritual practice was preserved, adapted, or lost? And what was left behind as the canyon's population dispersed, leaving monumental structures and roads as silent witnesses to a vanished civilization? Walking through the ruins today, amid sun-bleached stone, dry washes, and the whisper of wind through the canyon, one feels a profound connection to human ambition and transience. Chaco Canyon demonstrates that even in a harsh, unforgiving environment, a society can achieve extraordinary architectural, engineering, and cultural feats. Yet, for all its brilliance, the Chacoan civilization vanished, leaving only questions. How did they thrive in such isolation, manage distant communities, and coordinate monumental construction? And ultimately, what hidden stories lie buried beneath the sands, within the stones, and in the subtle alignment of sky and earth, waiting for patient eyes to uncover a civilization that, like so many others across the Americas, disappeared from history yet left a lasting imprint on the land? From the high desert of the American Southwest, where the Chacoan roads and great houses hint at a civilization both sophisticated and vanished, our journey returns to the rugged northern coast of Peru, where the land rises in narrow valleys between the Pacific Ocean and the Andean foothills. Here, along the fertile plains and riverbeds, the Cupisnique culture emerged more than 3 millennia ago, leaving behind traces of artistry, ritual, and social organization that continue to intrigue archaeologists and historians. The landscape is stark, yet striking. Sun-bleached sands interrupted by winding rivers, scattered stone platforms, and ceremonial mounds that have withstood centuries of wind, rain, and seismic activity. Walking among these sites, one cannot help but sense a presence, as if the earth itself retains memory of a people who shaped it, and whose full story remains tantalizingly out of reach. The Cupisnique culture thrived approximately between 1500 and 500 BCE, preceding the better-known Moche Civilization that would later rise along the same northern coast. Yet despite their temporal distance, the Cupisnique established cultural and ritual foundations that influenced subsequent societies in profound ways. Their settlements were often modest in scale compared to later empires, yet their ceremonial centers, temples, and platforms reveal a deliberate architectural vision. Adobe and stone constructions, carefully aligned and oriented, suggest awareness of both environmental conditions and spiritual principles. What drove these early architects to construct such structures in challenging landscapes? Were these sites primarily ceremonial, or did they serve as hubs for social cohesion and governance as well? Perhaps the most striking legacy of the Cupisnique is their art. Ceramic vessels, figurines, and friezes display a remarkable sophistication, with motifs that are both abstract and deeply symbolic. Stylized depictions of jaguars, crocodiles, and supernatural beings appear repeatedly, hinting at a complex belief system intertwined with nature, fertility, and the spiritual realm. Some scholars suggest that these images represent shamanic visions, mythological narratives, or ritual practices meant to ensure cosmic and agricultural balance. Others note recurring geometric patterns and motifs that may encode calendrical or cosmological information, yet the full meaning of these symbols is lost to time. How did the Cupisnique perceive the world, and how did their spiritual and cultural practices shape their daily lives and social organization? Archaeological evidence points to far-reaching networks of trade and communication. Exotic shells, stones, and other materials found at Cupisnique sites indicate connections with distant coastal and highland regions. Such exchanges suggest a society that was not isolated, but rather integrated into broader patterns of interaction, commerce, and shared ritual. Yet, despite these connections, much of Cupisnique life remains invisible. How did they maintain social cohesion, organize labor, or transmit knowledge in a world without written language? And what ideas, rituals, or innovations were lost when this early civilization faded from the historical record, leaving only stones, ceramics, and fragments of painted friezes to testify to their presence? The decline of the Cupisnique culture is as enigmatic as their achievements. Unlike the dramatic collapses documented for later civilizations, the Cupisnique seem to have gradually disappeared, absorbed or transformed into succeeding cultural traditions along the northern coast. Was this shift driven by environmental pressures, such as changes in river courses or climatic variability? Did social transformation, population movement, or internal reorganization lead to the dissolution of their distinct cultural identity? Or did a combination of subtle factors, largely invisible to the archaeological record, bring an end to a civilization whose artistic and spiritual innovations would echo for centuries? The material remnants left behind invite ongoing contemplation. Ceramics depict rituals that suggest ceremonial sacrifice, cosmological observances, or initiation rites, yet their meaning is partially obscured. Architectural arrangements hint at an understanding of alignment, orientation, and sacred space that modern observers can only partially reconstruct. Even small figurines, some with exaggerated features or abstract forms, imply symbolic systems and social roles that have vanished alongside the people who created them. What stories, beliefs, or knowledge were encoded in these objects, waiting for someone to interpret them accurately? Walking through the ruins today, one is struck by the quiet precision of Cupisnique design, the enduring presence of their art, and the mystery that hangs over every site. The culture demonstrates that even in early periods, humans could develop complex religious, social, and artistic systems that leave lasting imprints on both landscape and culture. Yet the people themselves, how they lived, governed, or conceptualized their place in the cosmos, remain largely invisible. How could a society capable of such artistry, ritual sophistication, and environmental mastery gradually vanish from history? What knowledge, beliefs, and stories remain hidden beneath layers of soil, wind-blown sand, and centuries of human forgetfulness? In exploring the Cupisnique culture, we confront the paradox of human ambition and transience. Their art, architecture, and ritual objects speak of a civilization that was deliberate, imaginative, and deeply attuned to both nature and the spiritual world. And yet, their disappearance leaves us with questions that refuse to be answered fully. What compelled their rise? What guided their ingenuity? And what ultimately led to their fading from memory? And as we trace the delicate lines of their friezes, examine the precision of their platforms, and imagine the ceremonies that once took place upon these plains, we are left to wonder, how much more lies buried, still waiting to reveal the story of a people who flourished and vanished long before the world around them would take notice? From the northern valleys and ceremonial platforms of the Cupisnique culture, where artistry and ritual first flourished along the Peruvian coast, we journey further south to the stark yet hauntingly beautiful desert peninsula of Paracas. Here, the land meets the Pacific Ocean in cliffs and sandy coves, the wind carrying the faint scent of salt and the whispers of history. The Paracas region is deceptively quiet, yet beneath its dunes and along its arid terraces lie traces of a civilization whose mastery of art, textiles, and mortuary practice continues to fascinate scholars. The landscape itself seems to hold memory, with eroded mounds, deep burial pits, and carefully arranged ceremonial spaces suggesting a culture deeply aware of both life and the mysteries beyond it. The Paracas culture flourished between roughly 700 BCE and 200 CE, contemporaneous with later phases of the Cupisnique, and is perhaps most renowned for its remarkable achievements in textiles and funerary practices. The people of Paracas developed techniques that remain unparalleled, intricately woven and embroidered garments, dyed in vibrant colors, sometimes hundreds of years old, yet still astonishingly preserved. These textiles are more than decoration. They are coded narratives, symbolic expressions, and perhaps even guides to spiritual belief. Each stitch, pattern, and color conveys meaning, though the exact language of these symbols remains largely undeciphered. What stories did the Paracas wish to tell? Were these fabrics intended for ritual, status display, or communication with the divine? Burial practices provide further insight into Paracas society, as well as profound questions about their worldview. The dead were interred in deep shaft tombs, often bundled carefully with textiles, ceramics, and ceremonial objects. Some burials contained multiple individuals, arranged in ways that suggest ritual significance, while others feature elaborate headdresses or cranial modifications. Paracas skulls, sometimes elongated through deliberate binding, hint at cultural practices that distinguished identity, status, or spiritual affiliation. Why did they engage in such striking forms of bodily transformation, and what significance did these physical alterations hold within their society? How did the living perceive these transformations in relation to cosmology, ancestry, or social hierarchy? The art of Paracas extends beyond textiles and burial practices. Ceramics, often painted with abstract motifs and symbolic imagery, depict animals, mythical beings, and geometric patterns whose meaning continues to elude interpretation. Some scholars propose that these designs encode cosmological knowledge, agricultural cycles, or shamanic visions. Others suggest they represent social or political allegiances. Trade networks appear evident as well, with obsidian, spondylus shells, and other materials sourced from distant regions, pointing to far-reaching interaction and influence. And yet, despite this connectivity and sophistication, much about Paracas society remains mysterious. How did they organize labor, sustain communities in a challenging desert environment, and transmit knowledge across generations without a written language? Environmental factors may have played a critical role in both the rise and decline of the Paracas. The region's deserts are harsh and unpredictable, dependent on fog, river valleys, and irrigation to sustain agriculture and human settlement. Archaeological evidence suggests periods of ecological stress, potentially caused by shifts in rainfall, river courses, or El Niño events. Could such environmental challenges have prompted the relocation, transformation, or eventual disappearance of this culture? And if so, how did they adapt, innovate, or attempt to mitigate these forces before the society gradually faded from prominence? The mortuary practices of Paracas also raise profound questions about belief, power, and continuity. In some tombs, textiles and objects were carefully layered over generations, suggesting a conscious effort to preserve memory and convey authority beyond the life of the individual. Some scholars posit that these rituals encoded spiritual cosmology or were intended to maintain the cohesion of elite families across generations. Others suggest more speculative ideas. Were these tombs markers of territorial claims, encoded with symbolic messages, or even guides for the dead in the afterlife? The evidence invites reflection, yet never provides definitive answers, leaving room for imagination and interpretation. Walking among the Paracas burial mounds and examining the exquisite textiles and ceremonial objects, one cannot help but feel both awe and quiet unease. These artifacts demonstrate extraordinary craftsmanship, cultural continuity, and deep symbolic thought, yet they speak in a language largely lost to us. How could a society so capable of artistic, technological, and social sophistication gradually disappear from the coastal valleys of Peru? How much knowledge, belief, or ritual has been lost beneath the sands, waiting silently for discovery? The Paracas culture reminds us that human ingenuity and expression often precede written history, yet leave traces that endure far longer than the lives of those who created them. Their textiles, burial practices, and art form a visual language, whispering across centuries, challenging us to decode their meaning. And as we trace the lines of embroidered threads, the contours of ceremonial mounds, and the shadows of elongated skulls in burial pits, we are left with an enduring question. What else lies hidden beneath the sands of Paracas, still holding secrets of a civilization that rose, flourished, and vanished, leaving only glimpses of its brilliance for us to ponder today. From the sun-baked coastal deserts of Paracas, where textiles and burial rituals whisper of vanished lives, we travel northward across the rugged landscapes of northern Mexico into the fertile valleys and canyons of Chihuahua. Here, amid the arid mountains and winding rivers, lie the remains of a remarkable civilization known as Casas Grandes, or Paquimé, a settlement that once flourished in the shadows of cliffs, valleys, and plateaus, leaving behind an architectural and cultural legacy that continues to intrigue and mystify. Even today, the adobe walls, multi-storied compounds, and intricate water channels evoke the presence of a people who mastered both environment and society, yet vanished, leaving more questions than answers. The Casas Grandes civilization thrived between roughly 1150 and 1450 CE, forming a hub of culture, commerce, and ceremony in the harsh northern deserts. Its central settlement, Paquimé, was extraordinary in scale and complexity. Thousands of rooms organized into multi-story adobe compounds, interconnected by plazas, streets, and subterranean passageways. The city is carefully planned, with residential, ceremonial, and industrial areas delineated in a manner that suggests sophisticated social organization. How did a society in such an arid, challenging environment mobilize labor and resources to construct these monumental structures? And what principles guided the arrangement of rooms, plazas, and ceremonial spaces across this sprawling settlement? Water management was a defining feature of Paquimé. Ingenious irrigation canals, terraces, and reservoirs demonstrate a mastery of hydrology that allowed the civilization to sustain agriculture in a desert environment. Corn, beans, squash, and other crops thrived along these carefully engineered waterways, supporting dense populations. Yet, even with this technological ingenuity, questions remain. Did environmental pressures, including drought or shifting river patterns, contribute to the civilization's decline? And if so, how did a society so skilled at adapting to its surroundings eventually face challenges it could not overcome? Artifacts from Casas Grandes reveal a culture deeply connected to both artistry and trade. Elaborate pottery, shell jewelry, and copper implements attest to skillful craftsmanship, while evidence of trade networks stretching hundreds of kilometers suggests connections to distant regions, from the American Southwest to Mesoamerica. Some ceramics depict human figures, animals, and ritual scenes, their symbolism still open to interpretation. What social, spiritual, or political meanings were encoded in these objects? And how did these networks of exchange shape the identity, power, and culture of Paquimé's inhabitants? The architecture of Casas Grandes itself raises intriguing mysteries. Certain buildings feature T-shaped doorways, a motif that appears in other parts of the Southwest, hinting at shared cultural or spiritual ideas. Some compounds include kivas, subterranean ceremonial rooms reminiscent of ancestral Puebloan practice, while other structures show evidence of defensive design, suggesting a society attuned to both ritual and security. Yet many questions remain. Were these architectural choices primarily symbolic, functional, or both? Did the T-shaped doorways and room layouts encode cosmological knowledge, social hierarchy, or ritual pathways for the living and the dead? The decline of Casas Grandes adds another layer of mystery. Around the mid-15th century, the city was largely abandoned, its walls left to the desert winds, its population dispersed. Archaeological evidence points to possible social upheaval, climatic stress, and resource pressures, yet no single factor fully explains the disappearance. Some scholars propose internal conflict or political fragmentation, while others speculate on disease or economic disruption. Could multiple factors have converged, leaving the civilization unable to sustain itself despite its technological and cultural sophistication? Or is there knowledge, ritual practice, or social organization lost forever, invisible to the archaeological record, that might explain this enigmatic disappearance. The human remains and burial practices of Casas Grandes also hint at complexity and mystery. Some burials suggest social stratification, with elite individuals interred with jewelry, ceramics, and ceremonial objects, while others contain signs of ritual or symbolic practices that are difficult to interpret. Did these practices reflect a rigid hierarchy, spiritual beliefs, or a combination of both? And how might they connect to the broader networks of trade, ceremony, and social cohesion that sustained the city for centuries? Walking through Paquimé today, the adobe walls still stand, sun-baked and wind-eroded, yet conveying the presence of a civilization that was both ambitious and highly organized. The plazas, multi-story compounds, and water channels speak of careful planning, deep environmental knowledge, and a society capable of complex social, ceremonial, and economic coordination. And yet, the people themselves are absent, their lives, beliefs, and stories largely obscured by time. How did such a sophisticated society, capable of shaping the desert into a thriving urban center, ultimately vanish? What secrets remain buried beneath the sands, behind the adobe walls, or lost entirely with the people who once called Paquimé home? Casas Grandes challenges modern assumptions about human ingenuity and resilience. It reminds us that even in harsh environments, societies can achieve remarkable complexity, yet remain vulnerable to forces, environmental, social, or otherwise, that are difficult to control. And as we trace the streets, examine the pottery, and imagine the daily and ceremonial life within its walls, we are left with a persistent question. What remains hidden, still waiting beneath the desert floor to reveal the full story of a civilization that rose, thrived, and disappeared, leaving behind only tantalizing traces of its brilliance? From the adobe walls and ceremonial plazas of Casas Grandes, where the desert preserves whispers of vanished lives, our journey moves westward into the vast Sonoran desert of what is now southern Arizona. Here, in a landscape of cacti, arroyos, and sun-bleached valleys, the Hohokam Civilization once thrived. At first glance, the desert seems sparse and forbidding, yet the remains of ancient canals, pit houses, ball courts, and ceremonial mounds hint at a society that mastered the harsh environment, shaping it to sustain large communities over centuries. Walking across these arid plains today, it is impossible not to sense the ingenuity and ambition of a people who engineered water, agriculture, and social systems on a scale that continues to inspire awe. The Hohokam flourished roughly between 200 CE and 1450 CE, establishing a network of settlements along the Salt and Gila rivers. Their most extraordinary achievement was perhaps their canal system, hundreds of kilometers of hand-dug channels that brought river water to otherwise arid lands, enabling intensive agriculture capable of supporting dense populations. Corn, beans, squash, cotton, and other crops flourished under this irrigation, transforming desert sands into fertile farmland. How did a society without metal tools or draft animals design, construct, and maintain such a vast network? And what knowledge of hydrology, seasonal cycles, and soil management was embedded in these seemingly simple canals? Hohokam architecture and settlement patterns further reveal a civilization of remarkable organization. Communities consisted of pit houses, later replaced by above-ground structures, arranged in clusters around plazas. Ceremonial ball courts, some of the largest north of Mesoamerica, indicate shared ritual practices and suggest connections to broader cultural traditions. Pottery, shell jewelry, and stone tools show both craftsmanship and far-reaching trade networks, connecting Hohokam communities with distant peoples across the southwest and northern Mexico. What cultural and spiritual significance did these ball courts hold, and how did they reinforce social cohesion across an expansive territory? Artifacts from Hohokam sites offer glimpses into daily life, artistry, and belief. Intricately decorated pottery and shell ornaments reveal both aesthetic sophistication and symbolic meaning, yet the language of these designs remains largely lost. Some items suggest ritual or ceremonial function, others appear utilitarian, and still others hint at social hierarchy or status. How were these objects used, and what values or ideas did they encode? To what extent did artistry, ritual, and practical life intertwine in a civilization whose most enduring legacy is both visible and enigmatic? Despite their achievements, the Hohokam culture declined and largely disappeared by the mid-15th century. Archaeological evidence points to a combination of environmental and social factors. Prolonged droughts, shifts in river courses, soil depletion, and potential conflict between communities may have undermined the delicate balance that sustained their agriculture and settlements. Yet no single explanation fully accounts for their disappearance. Did internal political struggles destabilize their society? Were spiritual or cultural transformations influencing migration or abandonment of settlements? Or did a convergence of subtle pressures, imperceptible in the archaeological record, quietly unravel the fabric of Hohokam life? The Hohokam's relationship with their environment was both remarkable and fragile. Their extensive canal networks demonstrate a profound understanding of hydrology and landscape management. Yet they also reveal vulnerability. Dependence on river flows left communities exposed to climatic fluctuations. Evidence of flooding, sedimentation, and drought appears alongside signs of adaptive strategies, suggesting a society attempting to reconcile human ambition with the unpredictable rhythms of the desert. How much of their knowledge and ingenuity was lost when the canals fell into disuse, the settlements were abandoned, and the desert reclaimed its dominion? Ceremonial and ritual practices, though partially understood, also contribute to the mystery. Ball courts and mound sites, often aligned with cardinal directions or celestial events, suggest a sophisticated cosmology, yet the precise nature of Hohokam's spiritual life remains elusive. Did these structures serve as centers for social gatherings, agricultural ceremonies, or intercommunity diplomacy? Were they designed to connect the living with ancestors or the cosmos? And how did such practices shape cohesion, identity, and cultural memory across generations before ultimately fading into silence? Walking among the ruins of Hohokam settlements today, one is struck by both ingenuity and absence. The canals, terraces, and ceremonial structures speak to careful planning, social organization, and technical skill. Yet the people themselves are gone, leaving only traces of their lives. How did a civilization capable of transforming one of North America's harshest deserts vanish so thoroughly? What knowledge, traditions, and spiritual practices were lost when the settlements were abandoned? And what might remain hidden beneath the sands and sediment, waiting to reveal further insight into a society whose ingenuity, ambition, and disappearance continue to challenge understanding? The Hohokam Civilization reminds us that human achievement can be both extraordinary and ephemeral. Their canals, structures, and artifacts endure, yet they speak of a society whose story is incomplete, leaving behind tantalizing fragments of engineering, artistry, and ritual. As we trace the paths of ancient canals, examine pottery decorated with symbols now indecipherable, and walk the plazas where communities once gathered, we are left with an enduring sense of mystery. How much of human ingenuity can survive the passage of time, and how much remains hidden, waiting to tell the story of a civilization that thrived, adapted, and ultimately vanished into the desert? From the sun-scorched deserts and canal networks of the Hohokam, where ingenuity once carved life from arid earth, our journey turns southeast to the high plateau of central Mexico. Here, between the volcano-studded mountains and the wide expanse of the Basin of Mexico, lie the ruins of Teotihuacan, a city that, at its peak, was one of the largest in the world, home to tens of thousands, yet whose origins and decline remain cloaked in mystery. Even today, the Avenue of the Dead stretches in perfect alignment across the flat valley floor, flanked by massive pyramids and ceremonial complexes, their shadows casting an almost otherworldly presence over the landscape. Walking here, one feels the echo of a civilization whose ambition, planning, and spiritual vision shaped the cosmos itself into stone and earth. Teotihuacan flourished from around 100 BCE to 550 CE, long before the rise of the Aztecs, who would later revere it as a sacred place. The city was meticulously planned. Grid-like streets, residential compounds, and monumental pyramids rising above the plains, including the Pyramid of the Sun, the Pyramid of the Moon, and the Temple of the Feathered Serpent. These structures are not mere architecture. They are statements of power, devotion, and cosmology, aligned with celestial events and the rhythms of the natural world. How did a society without a deciphered written language and with limited metalworking technology design and coordinate the construction of a city that rivals the scale and precision of modern urban planning? The Avenue of the Dead, stretching for more than 2 kilometers, provides a glimpse into the city's organizational and ceremonial sophistication. Along its sides, residential compounds and workshops suggest a population engaged in craft, trade, and ritual, while the grand pyramids serve as focal points for ceremonies that likely defined political, religious, and social life. Murals and sculptures uncovered within these complexes depict deities, mythical narratives, and symbolic motifs, yet their precise meaning remains elusive. What religious or cosmological principles guided these artistic choices? And how did ordinary citizens experience life within a city so grand and intricately ordered, where the lines between politics, ritual, and daily existence were likely intertwined? Trade and craft were central to Teotihuacan's influence. Obsidian tools, pottery, jewelry, and intricate figurines reveal a society capable of producing and distributing high-quality goods across vast distances, connecting the city to regions far beyond the basin of Mexico. Some murals suggest foreign presence, merchants, emissaries, or perhaps even colonists, indicating that Teotihuacan was a hub of cultural and economic interaction in Mesoamerica. Yet much remains speculative. How centralized was political authority? Was Teotihuacan governed by rulers, councils, or a priestly elite? And what mechanisms allowed a city of perhaps 100,000 inhabitants to maintain social cohesion, ritual observance, and economic efficiency without the administrative records we take for granted today? Despite its prominence and sophistication, Teotihuacan experienced a dramatic decline by the mid-6th century CE. Archaeological evidence suggests widespread destruction in parts of the city, including burned palaces and pyramids, coupled with mass abandonment. Scholars debate the causes: internal rebellion, social upheaval, environmental stress, or economic disruption may all have played a role. Could external pressures, such as conflict with neighboring regions, have contributed? Or was the city's collapse a culmination of internal tensions that had been building for generations? The absence of definitive records leaves these questions unanswered, creating a profound sense of mystery about the fate of a civilization that dominated central Mexico for centuries. The city's material culture adds further layers to the enigma. Murals, ceramics, and carved sculptures depict humans, gods, animals, and abstract motifs, hinting at religious practice, political ideology, and social hierarchy, yet the symbolism is often ambiguous. Burial sites reveal elaborate interments, sometimes with offerings of obsidian, jade, and other precious materials, suggesting both ritual significance and the presence of a socially stratified elite. What did these burial practices signify to the Teotihuacanos themselves? Were they expressions of devotion, demonstrations of power, or guides for the journey beyond life? And how much of their worldview has been irrevocably lost with the passing of centuries? Even the city's layout holds clues, yet provokes questions. The alignment of streets, pyramids, and ceremonial spaces with astronomical phenomena suggests that the Teotihuacanos were not only master planners, but also keen observers of the cosmos. Some researchers propose that the city functioned as a terrestrial representation of celestial order, with human activity reflecting the cycles of sun, moon, and stars. Others speculate that certain compounds were pilgrimage centers, intended to bring together diverse populations under ritual and economic influence. What knowledge was encoded in the very geography of the city, and how much of it remains buried beneath rubble, sand, and the passage of time? Walking among the ruins today, the vast scale and precision of Teotihuacan evoke both awe and profound curiosity. The city embodies a civilization that achieved remarkable technical, artistic, and organizational feats, yet its people vanished, leaving only stone, pigment, and faint echoes of their lives. How did such a sophisticated metropolis rise from the central Mexican highlands? And how did it disappear, leaving later generations to revere its memory, while its origins and inner workings faded into uncertainty? Teotihuacan challenges our understanding of human potential and vulnerability. Its monuments, streets, and art endure as silent witnesses to ambition, ingenuity, and the passage of time, yet the civilization itself remains a mystery. As we trace the avenues, gaze upon the pyramids, and imagine life within the city's walls, one question persists above all others. What remains hidden beneath the earth, behind the murals, and within the spaces between the stones, waiting to reveal the secrets of a civilization that rose to greatness, shaped the lives of countless people, and then disappeared from history, leaving only shadows and unanswered questions in its wake? From the sprawling urban grid, monumental pyramids, and celestial alignments of Teotihuacan, where stone and ritual speak of a civilization that dominated central Mexico long before the rise of the Aztecs, our journey moves to the highlands of Hidalgo, to the ancient city of Tula, the heart of the Toltec Civilization. Here, atop a plateau framed by distant mountains and the whisper of desert winds, the ruins of pyramids, ball courts, and the imposing Atlantean statues stand as silent sentinels, guarding stories of a people whose political influence, military power, and spiritual reach extended across Mesoamerica. Even in their ruined state, these structures convey an aura of authority and mystery, as if the stones themselves retain memory of a society that rose, flourished, and ultimately vanished. The Toltec civilization flourished roughly between 900 and 1150 CE, inheriting both cultural and architectural legacies from Teotihuacan, yet creating a distinct identity marked by militaristic prowess, religious innovation, and far-reaching trade networks. Tula, their capital, was a planned city, with ceremonial centers, pyramid temples, and residential compounds, suggesting both hierarchical governance and ritual centrality. The Pyramid of Quetzalcoatl, crowned by rows of massive basalt warriors, dominates the cityscape, its statues and reliefs simultaneously awe-inspiring and enigmatic. How did the Toltecs mobilize labor, materials, and social organization to construct such monumental architecture? And what ideological or spiritual messages were encoded in the scale, alignment, and symbolism of these edifices? Artifacts and architectural features reveal a civilization deeply engaged with warfare, ritual, and artistic expression. The Atlantean figures, tall, sculpted warriors, carry spears, obsidian knives, and symbolic regalia, suggesting both military authority and ceremonial significance. Murals and decorative carvings depict deities, mythical creatures, and scenes of conquest, yet their exact meanings remain elusive. Were these images propaganda, religious allegory, or a coded history of the Toltecs' rise to power? And how did these symbols communicate ideas of legitimacy, divinity, and societal order to those who inhabited the city? Trade and cultural exchange were central to Toltec influence. Obsidian, jade, shells, and other exotic materials indicate connections extending across Mesoamerica, linking the Toltecs to distant regions and cultures. Some scholars propose that their influence may have shaped later civilizations, including the Aztecs, who revered Tula as a sacred ancestral city. Yet the precise nature of Toltec governance, social organization, and religious practice remains largely speculative, leaving open questions about how such a society maintained cohesion, controlled resources, and projected power across both urban centers and distant territories. The decline of Tula adds another layer of mystery. By the mid-12th century, the city was largely abandoned, its grand structures left to weathering, collapse, and the desert winds. Archaeological evidence suggests possible causes including internal political upheaval, climate stress, warfare, or economic disruption. But none fully explains the rapidity or scale of the decline. Did a combination of environmental, social, and political pressures converge, undermining a civilization that had mastered both organization and ritual? Or did factors invisible to the archaeological record, shifts in religious authority, population movement, or cultural transformation, play a decisive role in the city's abandonment? The spiritual life of the Toltecs is equally enigmatic. Temples, pyramids, and ritual spaces indicate a complex cosmology in which war, fertility, and celestial cycles intersected with governance. Some scholars suggest that the Toltecs combined militaristic ideology with religious symbolism, creating a culture in which power and divinity were inseparable. Others speculate that Tula functioned as a pilgrimage or ceremonial hub, drawing elites from surrounding regions for ritual observances. Yet the precise nature of Toltec cosmology, their pantheon of gods, and the rituals performed atop their pyramids remain largely unknown. What beliefs guided their society, and how did they shape the decisions, ambitions, and daily lives of the people who built and inhabited these monumental centers? Walking among the ruins today, the scale and precision of Tula's architecture continue to inspire awe. The pyramids, ball courts, and colossal warrior statues suggest a civilization that balanced ceremony, governance, and military organization with artistic and symbolic expression. And yet, the Toltecs themselves have vanished, leaving only stones, carvings, and scattered artifacts as testament to their lives. How did a society capable of shaping such monumental landscapes, orchestrating complex rituals, and projecting power across regions ultimately disappear from history? What knowledge, traditions, and stories were lost when the city was abandoned and its inhabitants dispersed? Tula and the Toltecs remind us that human societies can achieve extraordinary sophistication, yet remain vulnerable to forces that may be environmental, social, or unseen. Their monumental architecture and artistry endure, yet the civilization itself remains shadowed in uncertainty. As we trace the lines of the pyramids, study the Atlantean statues, and imagine the ceremonies once performed atop these platforms, one question lingers. What remains hidden beneath the stones, buried in the ruins, or lost entirely to memory? Waiting to reveal the full story of a civilization that rose, influenced an entire region, and then vanished, leaving echoes that continue to intrigue and mystify even today. As the camera pans over the arid plains of the Supe Valley, the early morning mist clings to the low hills, softening the contours of an ancient landscape. From this vantage point, the earth seems quiet, almost untouched. Yet beneath this seemingly ordinary terrain lies a civilization that challenges our understanding of early human society in the Americas. The Caral-Supe Civilization, one of the oldest known urban centers on the continent. Here, amid the desert winds and whispering sands, evidence of a society both sophisticated and enigmatic emerges, inviting us to reconsider the very origins of civilization in the Western Hemisphere. The heart of Caral, the principal city of the Supe Valley, reveals monumental architecture that defies simple explanation. Step pyramids rise in precise geometric formations, their sun-baked stone terraces catching the first light of dawn. Circular plazas, perfectly aligned, open into expansive courtyards where ancient inhabitants once gathered. Archaeologists have traced the outlines of over 30 such structures, some rising nearly 20 meters high, crafted without the use of metals, wheels, or draft animals. How did a society, living nearly 5,000 years ago, construct these imposing edifices with such precision and purpose? Even more striking is the apparent absence of certain elements we associate with advanced societies. There are no fortifications, no evidence of warfare, no complex art of weaponry. Instead, Caral-Supe seems built for harmony, a city of commerce, culture, and spiritual life. Inscriptions are scarce, written records almost non-existent. Yet musical instruments, quipus, chord systems possibly used for record-keeping, and remnants of plazas suggest a community deeply invested in ritual, mathematics, and social cohesion. Could it be that this society achieved monumental advancement not through conquest, but through cooperation, intellect, and ingenuity? The economy of Caral adds another layer of intrigue. Archaeologists have uncovered evidence of extensive trade networks reaching the distant coasts, suggesting a society both self-sufficient and outward-looking. Cotton, grown in the surrounding valleys, was woven into textiles that likely traveled far beyond the immediate region. Fish and other marine products were transported inland, feeding the urban population. Scholars have marveled at the scale of this trade, which required careful planning, logistics, and a deep understanding of the environment. Yet despite this apparent mastery of resources, the civilization eventually declined, leaving behind monumental ruins but few traces of their daily lives. What adds a further air of mystery is the apparent simultaneity of Caral-Supe with the earliest known civilizations of the Old World. Constructed around 2600 BCE, Caral predates the monumental architecture of the Egyptian pyramids and contemporaneously exists with the earliest urban centers of Mesopotamia. Could there have been a parallel evolution of human complexity across continents? Or might there have been subtle, untraceable connections that defy the linear narratives of history? While mainstream archaeology emphasizes independent development, these questions linger, hinting at possibilities that remain tantalizingly out of reach. Even more perplexing are the gaps in our understanding of Caral's decline. The city was abandoned gradually, rather than destroyed by invasion or natural disaster, leaving archaeologists to speculate about the causes. Environmental shifts may have disrupted agriculture, or social structures could have eroded over generations. Yet some fringe theories invite more speculative interpretations. Did Caral-Supe succumb to forces beyond human comprehension? Perhaps climate anomalies, unexplained seismic events, or cultural upheavals whose records have vanished entirely? The evidence is tantalizingly incomplete, offering glimpses but never a full picture. One of the most evocative features of Caral-Supe is the sophistication of its urban planning. The alignment of pyramids and plazas suggests a precise understanding of astronomy, with certain structures oriented to capture the rising sun during solstices. Could this imply a spiritual or ritualistic purpose, or perhaps a calendar system that helped regulate agricultural cycles? The absence of written records leaves room for interpretation. Scholars can reconstruct layouts, but the intentions of the builders remain elusive, and with them, the cultural heartbeat of the civilization. Walking through the ruins today, one can almost hear the echoes of life long past, the footsteps of merchants carrying woven cotton and dried fish, the rhythms of musicians playing flutes carved from local reeds, the chants of rituals performed in the circular plazas. Yet these sounds exist only in imagination. The stones themselves hold their secrets close, resisting the certainty that archaeology often promises. And perhaps that is the most profound mystery of Caral-Supe. It challenges our assumptions about what an ancient civilization can achieve, and then quietly vanishes, leaving only questions in its wake. In considering the Caral-Supe civilization, we are confronted by an enduring paradox. Here is a society capable of immense architectural, economic, and cultural achievement, yet largely silent in the historical record. Here is evidence of intelligence, innovation, and planning, yet no overt record of how or why this society arose or why it eventually disappeared. Did the Caral-Supe people leave clues that we simply have yet to decode, hidden in the stones, the earth, or the faint traces of quipu strings? Or is their disappearance a reminder that human history is often a series of unsolved puzzles, where knowledge and mystery coexist uneasily, each illuminating and obscuring the other in equal measure? As we linger over the terraces and plazas of Caral, the questions mount. What drove these people to create such grand structures? How did they sustain an urban population without the tools or technologies we consider essential? And most hauntingly, why did they leave? The answers remain buried in the Supe Valley sands, obscured by millennia, yet silently beckoning to those willing to look, to wonder, and to question. In the vast canvas of human history, Caral-Supe stands not only as one of the earliest cities of the Americas, but as an enduring enigma, a civilization that challenges our understanding and invites us to imagine what might still be hidden, waiting beneath the desert sun. As dawn breaks over the Andean foothills of southern Colombia, a pale light spreads across the rugged landscape, revealing rolling hills, deep valleys, and terraces carved into the mountainsides. Among this serene, almost otherworldly terrain lie the remnants of the San Agustín culture, a civilization whose silent stone monuments still watch over the land as if keeping secrets long forgotten. The air is crisp, carrying the faint scent of earth and rain, and yet, beneath this natural calm, there is a quiet hum of mystery, a sense that these hills were once alive with a people whose knowledge, artistry, and beliefs remain largely inscrutable. The San Agustín culture flourished between roughly 3,300 BCE and 1,600 CE, spanning centuries of remarkable human activity. Its most striking legacy is the monumental stone sculptures scattered across the landscape. Colossal statues of humans, animals, and hybrid beings, often carved with an intensity that hints at both technical skill and profound symbolic meaning. These figures stand silently along ceremonial pathways, on elevated mounds, and atop burial tumuli, their features enigmatic, their intentions elusive. Some display serene expressions, others fierce and commanding, as though guarding hidden truths. Who were the artisans capable of carving these stones with such precision, using tools far more rudimentary than those of later civilizations? And why these forms, this strange, almost dreamlike pantheon of figures that blend human, animal, and abstract motifs? The tombs of San Agustín add another layer of intrigue. Subterranean chambers, carefully constructed from massive stone blocks, served as final resting places for elite individuals. Within these tombs, archaeologists have uncovered intricate burial goods, ornaments, ceramic vessels, and evidence of ritual feasting. The sheer scale and complexity of these tombs suggest a sophisticated social hierarchy, yet the society left no written records to explain their beliefs, social structures, or cosmology. Were these tombs simply markers of power, or did they serve a deeper spiritual purpose, guiding the dead through a journey beyond the visible world? One cannot explore San Agustín without considering the extraordinary animal motifs etched into their art. Jaguars, snakes, eagles, and mythical hybrids abound, often depicted in dynamic, almost violent poses. Mainstream interpretations suggest these symbols reflect shamanic practices, a spiritual connection to the natural world, and perhaps a belief in transformation or protective forces. Yet the precise meanings remain speculative. Some researchers wonder if these images encode astronomical knowledge, agricultural cycles, or even forgotten mythologies. Could the jaguar represent more than a predator, perhaps a guardian of thresholds between life and death, or a symbol of unseen powers guiding the community? Equally enigmatic is the sudden decline of the San Agustín culture. By around 1600 CE, these communities had largely vanished from the archaeological record. The reasons remain unclear. Environmental change, soil exhaustion, or social upheaval may have contributed, but no definitive explanation exists. Some theories suggest volcanic activity or seismic events destabilized the region, forcing inhabitants to disperse. Others speculate that disease or external incursions played a role. Yet, unlike civilizations erased through conquest, San Agustín seems to have faded quietly, leaving behind only silent stones that refuse to divulge their secrets. The alignment and placement of San Agustín's monuments hint at a sophisticated understanding of the landscape and perhaps celestial patterns. Certain statues and mounds appear to follow the contours of the rivers, valleys, and mountains, suggesting a deliberate integration of their architecture with natural topography. Could these placements have been intended to mark sacred sites, track celestial events, or define territorial boundaries in ways we do not yet fully understand? The lack of written documentation leaves these questions tantalizingly unanswered, and every excavation seems to raise more mysteries than it solves. Walking among these monolithic statues today, one feels the weight of both time and intention. Some figures stand over 4 meters tall, carved from volcanic rock with such meticulous care that one cannot help but marvel at the patience and skill involved. Others are smaller, intricately detailed, each groove and incision speaking to an aesthetic sensibility and spiritual awareness that feels both distant and familiar. Who were these sculptors? How did they move, shape, and position these enormous stones? And why have so many of their works survived millennia, weathering the elements while the people themselves disappeared? Even the surrounding landscape seems to conspire with the mystery. The rivers that snake through the valleys, the sudden cliffs, and the fertile terraces suggest a deliberate choice of settlement locations. Perhaps these were not merely practical sites for agriculture and habitation, but places imbued with sacred energy, carefully chosen for ritual, cosmology, or governance. Archaeologists continue to map the connections between monuments, mounds, and natural features, yet no pattern fully explains the cultural logic. The land itself seems to guard the story, offering glimpses of a civilization that existed in harmony with its environment, yet deliberately leaving critical questions unanswered. In reflecting on the San Agustín culture, one confronts a profound tension between what is known and what remains elusive. The civilization demonstrates remarkable sophistication, social organization, artistic achievement, spiritual depth. Yet so much about their lives, their beliefs, and their disappearance remains hidden beneath the soil, the stones, and the mist of time. Could the carvings hold a coded language or lost history, decipherable only through methods we have yet to develop? Or are some mysteries destined to endure, their answers forever obscured, leaving us to wonder at the ingenuity and enigma of those who came before us? As the sun sinks behind the distant mountains, shadows stretch across the mounds and statues, bringing the stone guardians to life in the fading light. one cannot help but feel that the San Agustin people left more than artifacts. They left questions, provocations, a silent dialogue with the future. What prompted their extraordinary artistic vision? How did they organize their society, and why did it vanish? Perhaps, somewhere within these hills, untold stories still slumber, waiting for the day we might understand a fraction more of the culture that once thrived, leaving us to marvel at what is seen and to wonder at what will never be fully revealed. From the mist-laden highlands of Colombia, we travel northward, across deserts and mountains, to a different yet equally enigmatic landscape, the arid expanse of northern Mexico, where the Casas Grandes culture once flourished. In the heart of the Chihuahua Desert, near the modern town of Paquimé, the remains of an extraordinary society emerge from the ochre sands. Here, sun-bleached adobe walls rise in orderly grids, ancient canals shimmer faintly where water once flowed, and the quiet wind seems to whisper the echoes of a civilization that thrived, traded, and vanished, leaving behind a puzzle that has confounded archaeologists for decades. Casas Grandes, also known as Paquimé, reached its peak between roughly 1200 and 1450 CE. The settlement is remarkable not only for its size, spanning several square kilometers, but also for its complexity. Multi-storied adobe buildings, some rising to 3 stories, form an urban plan that suggests deliberate organization and a sophisticated understanding of both architecture and social hierarchy. Walkways, plazas, and defensive walls indicate a community concerned with both communal life and protection. How could a people, existing in such a harsh desert environment, construct such enduring structures without modern tools or machinery? And what drove them to design a city that appears simultaneously functional, ceremonial, and symbolic? Among the most intriguing features of Casas Grandes are its elaborate water management systems. Channels, reservoirs, and irrigation ditches weave through the settlement, carrying life-giving water across a desert that offers so little. These feats of engineering imply not only practical knowledge, but also communal coordination and long-term planning. How did they conceive of such systems, and how far did their understanding of hydrology extend? The sophistication of these designs rivals that of more widely known civilizations, yet the culture of Casas Grandes remains far less understood, overshadowed by larger empires such as the Aztec and Maya. The artistic legacy of Casas Grandes is equally compelling. Polished pottery, adorned with intricate geometric designs and stylized animals, has been found throughout the site, often in burial contexts. The motifs are strikingly consistent, suggesting a shared aesthetic and symbolic language. Some depictions hint at ritual practices, cosmological beliefs, or even shamanic traditions. Could these designs encode knowledge, stories, or spiritual teachings now lost to time? And what does their artistry tell us about the social values, religious convictions, or daily lives of those who crafted them? Trade and interaction seem to have played a central role in the rise of Casas Grandes. Evidence of long-distance exchange has been discovered, including turquoise from the American Southwest, macaw feathers and shells from far-off coasts, and copper bells from distant regions. This suggests a society deeply connected to wider networks, capable of both influence and adaptation. Yet the extent of these connections raises further questions. Were these interactions primarily economic, cultural, or ceremonial? And did such trade networks influence the eventual fate of Casas Grandes, or contribute to its sudden decline? Despite its apparent prosperity, Casas Grandes did not endure. By the mid-15th century, the settlement was abandoned, and the reasons remain obscure. Environmental pressures, resource depletion, social unrest, or conflict with neighboring groups are among the more conventional explanations. Yet some researchers propose alternative possibilities. Could shifts in climate have undermined agriculture in ways that were not immediately obvious? Did trade networks falter, severing critical lifelines of sustenance and cultural exchange? Or might there have been internal transformations, political, spiritual, or societal, that led the inhabitants to leave behind their monumental constructions, quietly and deliberately? The alignment and planning of Casas Grandes also suggest a culture attentive to more than the practicalities of daily life. Certain structures and plazas appear deliberately oriented to cardinal directions, solstices, and celestial phenomena. Could these alignments indicate a sophisticated calendar system, ritual observances, or an understanding of astronomy now largely forgotten? Without written records, these interpretations remain speculative, yet the precision of the architecture hints at knowledge that extends beyond mere survival. Walking through the remains today, one is struck by the duality of Casas Grandes, a city of order and structure, yet also a site of unanswered questions. The multi-storied adobe complexes, the expansive plazas, the finely crafted pottery, all speak to a civilization with skill, organization, and artistry. And yet, for all its accomplishments, the people vanished, leaving behind silent walls, empty rooms, and buried treasures whose purposes we can only hypothesize. What motivated the construction of such a city, and what caused its abrupt disappearance? The desert sands keep their secrets close, offering fragments of answers while withholding the full story. In reflecting on Casas Grandes, one senses both continuity and mystery. The culture demonstrates remarkable adaptation to a harsh environment, ingenuity in trade and construction, and a deep sense of aesthetic and ritual expression. Yet it also presents us with paradoxes, a society capable of sustaining urban life in the desert, and yet one whose ultimate fate remains unknown. Could the abandonment of Casas Grandes represent a conscious migration, a spiritual decision, or a forced dispersal by factors we cannot reconstruct? Or is it a reminder that even the most sophisticated civilizations are vulnerable to forces, environmental, social, or otherwise, that lie beyond human control? As the sun sets over the Chihuahua Desert, casting long shadows across the adobe walls, one can almost imagine the daily life of its former inhabitants, merchants navigating the plazas, artisans shaping clay into vessels, priests conducting ceremonies in quiet courtyards. And yet, as darkness falls, we are reminded that Casas Grandes is now a city of echoes, a testament to human creativity and resilience, but also to the mysteries that endure. What lies buried beneath the sand, awaiting discovery? And how much of the story of Casas Grandes and of the vanished civilizations of ancient America remains hidden tantalizingly beyond our grasp? From the sun-scorched adobe walls of Casas Grandes, our journey moves eastward and upward into the cloud-kissed highlands of northern Peru. Here, in the steep canyons and mist-shrouded forests of the Amazonas region, the Chachapoya Civilization once carved out a world of remarkable ingenuity and mystery. The terrain is breathtaking yet forbidding. Sheer cliffs rise abruptly from deep ravines, waterfalls tumble into hidden pools, and the dense jungle seems to swallow entire hillsides. It is into this rugged, almost otherworldly landscape that the Chachapoya built their cities, fortresses of stone that appear perched between heaven and earth, seemingly impossible for human hands to place, yet enduring for centuries. The Chachapoya, often called the warriors of the clouds, flourished between roughly 800 and 1530 CE. They were never a single centralized empire, but a collection of communities bound by shared culture, language, and religious practice. Their settlements, such as the famous fortress of Cuelap, demonstrate an architectural sophistication that is both practical and awe-inspiring. Massive stone walls, some over 20 meters high, encircle entire villages. Within these walls, hundreds of circular stone houses cluster together in terraced formations, adapted to the contours of the mountain slopes. How did they design these cities with such precision in a landscape so steep and treacherous? And what drove them to build in places that seemed deliberately remote, almost hidden from the eyes of outsiders? Cuelap and other sites reveal the Chachapoya's mastery of stone masonry. Large limestone blocks were carefully cut and fitted without mortar in many areas, while elsewhere, stones were cemented together in intricate patterns that have withstood centuries of earthquakes and erosion. These structures are not merely functional, they are artistic, imbued with a sense of rhythm, symmetry, and symbolism. The circular homes and plazas may reflect social or spiritual organization, yet the precise meaning of these shapes remains elusive. Were the circles cosmological in significance, echoing the cycles of life, death, and the heavens above? Or did they serve more mundane purposes, related to communal living and defense? Equally compelling is the Chachapoya's funerary practice. Tombs carved into cliff faces, known as sarcophagi, often contain well-preserved mummies in seated positions, wrapped meticulously and accompanied by grave goods. These cliffside burials are remarkable not only for their placement, high above valleys, sometimes hundreds of meters from accessible paths, but for their preservation. Did the Chachapoya believe that elevation brought the dead closer to the divine? And how did they manage to transport bodies and artifacts to such perilous locations without leaving traces of struggle or misstep? The answers remain tantalizingly out of reach. The Chachapoya also left behind enigmatic art and textiles, fragments of a culture whose visual language is still not fully understood. Geometric motifs, depictions of animals, and ritual objects hint at a rich spiritual life and a sophisticated worldview. Yet the meaning of these symbols remains a mystery. Were they part of religious ceremonies, shamanic rituals, or a system of knowledge now lost to time? Some researchers suggest that Chachapoya culture may have encoded astronomical or calendrical knowledge in its architecture and art, while others propose that certain motifs reflect alliances, conflicts, or social hierarchies. Each hypothesis, while plausible, opens more questions than it answers. Despite their achievements, the Chachapoya vanished as a distinct society following the arrival of the Spanish in the early 16th century. Historical accounts describe fierce resistance, with the Chachapoya engaging in guerrilla warfare from their mountain fortresses. Yet even with such resilience, disease, conquest, and forced assimilation fragmented the culture. Archaeological traces suggest that while some traditions persisted, the population dispersed, leaving their monumental architecture to the encroaching jungle. Could the Chachapoya have anticipated this fate, deliberately constructing cities in places difficult for invaders to access? Or was the jungle's reclamation of their cities simply the inevitable outcome of centuries of isolation? The placement of Chachapoya settlements suggests a deep understanding of both the environment and its spiritual significance. Terraces for agriculture cling to steep slopes, while fortresses dominate ridgelines, offering surveillance over the valleys below. This integration of architecture with the natural landscape points to an intimate relationship with the environment, a balance between survival, defense, and ritual observance. Yet, despite this apparent harmony, the civilization disappeared, leaving monuments that seem to challenge gravity, human endurance, and historical expectation. Visiting Cuelap today, one cannot ignore the sense of awe it inspires. From the terraces, the dense cloud forest stretches to the horizon, punctuated by other ruins barely visible in the mist. The massive walls, circular dwellings, and ceremonial spaces speak to a society capable of engineering feats, artistic expression, and spiritual devotion, all executed in one of the most challenging terrains on Earth. And yet, for all their accomplishments, the Chachapoya left no written record, no codices, no stone tablets explaining who they were, what they believed, or why they disappeared. Only the silence remains, a silence that both fascinates and frustrates, inviting inquiry, but withholding certainty. The Chachapoya Civilization, like so many others we have explored, embodies the paradox of human achievement and impermanence. It challenges our understanding of what is possible in remote, hostile environments, and it reminds us that even the most resilient societies can vanish, leaving questions that may never be answered. Did their remote mountain fortresses serve as protection, a spiritual choice, or both? Was their disappearance solely due to external pressures, or did internal social transformations play a role? And most compellingly, what still lies hidden in the cloud forests, waiting to reveal its secrets to those willing to look, to climb, and to wonder? As the sun rises over the Andes, illuminating the fog-laden valleys and the stone walls of Cuelap, one cannot help but feel the presence of the Chachapoya, an echo of a civilization that reached astonishing heights, yet ultimately vanished, leaving only questions suspended in time. What truths remain buried beneath moss-covered stones and hidden within the cloud forest? And how much more might we discover if only we can navigate both the physical and historical terrain of this enigmatic people? High in the jagged peaks of the Andes, where the clouds cling like drifting veils over sheer stone cliffs, there lies a landscape that seems suspended between the earth and the sky. Terraces carved into the mountainsides ripple downward, following the contours of the land with a precision that still inspires awe. Here, the sun rises over jagged peaks and bathes the ruins of Machu Picchu in a golden glow, casting long shadows across walls built without mortar, yet standing firm for centuries. This is the realm of the Inca Empire, a civilization that once stretched over thousands of miles from present-day Ecuador to central Chile, yet vanished almost as mysteriously as it appeared. The Incas, or the Children of the Sun, as they called themselves, were masters of their environment. They built roads that clung to mountain faces, bridges that spanned roaring rivers, and storage houses perched high above valleys to preserve grain for generations. Their cities were feats of both engineering and spiritual devotion, aligned with the stars, the solstices, and sacred mountain peaks. But as we trace their achievements, one cannot help but notice an unsettling question. How did a society so sophisticated, so attuned to the rhythms of nature and human ingenuity, fall into such rapid decline? Traditional historians point to a combination of internal strife and external pressures. The Inca Empire, immense and diverse, was held together by a delicate web of alliances, tribute systems, and labor obligations, known as the Mita. When the Spanish conquistadors arrived in the 16th century, bringing with them disease, firearms, and horses, the social fabric of the empire began to unravel. Smallpox, in particular, swept through communities, killing millions before the first Spanish soldiers even reached the highlands. Civil war between rival Inca claimants further weakened their political cohesion, creating a perfect storm that allowed a few hundred Spaniards to topple a civilization of millions. Yet, as we wander through the ruins today, a deeper mystery lingers. Machu Picchu, for instance, was never mentioned in Spanish chronicles. It seems to have been hidden from the conquistadors, perched high in a valley that few outsiders dared to traverse. The precision of its stonework, walls of massive granite blocks cut and fitted so tightly that a knife blade cannot slip between them, leaves modern engineers baffled. How did the Inca achieve such perfect alignment, moving stones weighing several tons without metal tools or the wheel? Some suggest ingenious use of levers, ramps, and human labor, yet the question remains. Could there have been knowledge now lost to time, techniques so advanced that we can barely imagine them? Even the quipus, the intricate system of knotted strings used for record-keeping, add layers to the enigma. Unlike written language, quipus encode information through a combination of knot type, position, and color. Scholars are still deciphering their full meaning, and some argue that the quipus may have recorded far more than census data or tribute obligations. Could they have preserved historical records, astronomical knowledge, or spiritual insights that have vanished with the fall of the empire? Then there are the unexplained alignments scattered across Inca sites. At Intihuatana, a carved stone in Machu Picchu often referred to as the hitching post of the sun, shadows fall in precise patterns only during the solstices. Nearby, terraces and plazas appear to echo celestial constellations, hinting at a level of astronomical understanding that rivals civilizations half a world away. Did the Incas see themselves as part of a cosmic order, aligning stone and earth with the heavens? Or is there an even deeper knowledge embedded in the landscape, deliberately obscured by time? Some researchers and writers have proposed theories that move beyond conventional explanations. A handful suggest that the Inca, like other ancient civilizations, may have inherited knowledge from an older, lost culture, one whose techniques and wisdom were encoded into their architecture, agriculture, and social systems. Others point to unexplained phenomena: sudden shifts in population, oral histories speaking of vanished cities swallowed by the mountains, and legends of golden cities that glittered in the sun and disappeared without a trace. While these claims cannot be verified, they contribute to the lingering sense of wonder, the feeling that the story of the Inca Empire is far from fully told. Even today, the land itself guards its secrets. Trekkers on the Inca Trail find terraces that seem to vanish into the mist, paths leading to forgotten shrines, and caves where ancient offerings lie undisturbed. The higher one climbs, the more isolated the ruins become, suggesting that the Incas may have intentionally hidden parts of their world, protecting sacred knowledge from outsiders. What did they hope to preserve? And what has been lost forever? As we step back from the stones, listening to the wind whisper through the high Andes, one realizes that the story of the Inca Empire is as much about absence as presence. Entire cities, cultures, and ways of life were swept away, leaving only fragments for us to piece together. Yet these fragments hint at a civilization that was remarkable not only for what it built, but for what it may have understood about the world and the universe around it. Perhaps the greatest mystery of all is not how the Inca fell, but how much of their knowledge remains hidden, locked in stone, encoded in knots, or scattered across mountains that have resisted human exploration for centuries. As we gaze at the terraces, the walls, and the peaks that once echoed with the lives of millions, we are left with an open question, almost a challenge. What else might the Andes still be guarding, waiting for someone patient enough or daring enough to discover? In the shadow of these mountains, the past refuses to be fully known. It is a reminder that civilization, no matter how advanced, can vanish, leaving only whispers and ruins. And in those whispers, there lies a profound invitation to wonder, to question, and to seek the stories that time itself has tried to conceal. As the morning sun climbs over the arid plains of southern Peru, the desert stretches endlessly, a flat, barren expanse of ochre and rust-colored earth. From the ground, it appears almost featureless, a quiet wasteland shaped by wind and time. But from above, the landscape transforms into something extraordinary. Enormous, precise figures etched into the soil, stretching hundreds of meters in length. These are the Nazca lines, geoglyphs that depict hummingbirds, monkeys, spiders, and geometric patterns so vast that their full forms can only be comprehended from the air. They lie scattered across the desert floor like an open-air gallery, silent and enigmatic, whispering secrets from a civilization long vanished. The Nazca Civilization, flourishing roughly between 100 BCE and 800 CE, was a culture deeply attuned to the desert environment. They carved aqueducts and subterranean canals, known as puquios, ingeniously channeling scarce water to sustain their communities and agriculture. Their pottery and textiles reveal a sophisticated artistry filled with vibrant depictions of animals, plants, and ritual ceremonies. Yet, while their technical and artistic achievements are undeniable, it is the geoglyphs that capture our imagination and raise questions that persist to this day. How did a society without written language, without wheels, and with rudimentary tools create designs of such immense scale and precision? Scholars have long studied the Nazca lines, proposing practical explanations alongside the more mysterious. Some suggest they were astronomical markers, aligned with the movements of the sun, moon, and stars, perhaps to track planting and harvest cycles or sacred ceremonies. Others argue the lines functioned as ritual pathways, walked during processions to honor deities and request water from the heavens, a precious commodity in a desert prone to drought. But even with these theories, the sheer ambition and scale of the works remain astonishing. The hummingbird stretches nearly 300 feet from wingtip to wingtip. The spider, a complex web of intersecting lines, measures over 150 meters in length. These are creations that demand careful planning, collaboration, and knowledge, yet their full purpose still eludes us. Adding to the mystery is the method itself. The Nazca removed the reddish-brown iron oxide-coated pebbles from the desert surface, exposing the lighter soil beneath. This simple technique produced figures of remarkable clarity, visible for centuries, but many of the lines extend for kilometers without a single visible error, suggesting a precise understanding of geometry and perspective that seems almost impossible without aerial reference points. How could a civilization confined to the desert floor achieve such scale without the ability to see their creations from above? Could the Nazca have possessed knowledge of surveying or visual projection lost to history, or might there be something we do not yet comprehend about the ways they viewed their world? Beyond the technical questions lie more enigmatic elements. Certain geoglyphs depict figures and shapes that appear fantastical, almost otherworldly, with exaggerated features and forms not seen in everyday life. Some researchers note that many lines point toward subterranean water sources or ceremonial centers, hinting at a possible ritualistic or spiritual significance. Others propose that the desert itself was treated as a sacred canvas, a place where earth, sky, and human intention intersected in ways that defy simple categorization. And then there are anomalies, clusters of lines that do not correspond to any known astronomical or practical function, their meaning remaining stubbornly opaque. Speculative theories have naturally emerged around the Nazca lines, fueled by the difficulty in fully explaining them. Some suggest astronomical or calendrical purposes beyond our understanding, while others have proposed that the lines were messages or signals designed to be seen by deities from the heavens. There are even fringe theories imagining alien contact, ideas that, while unprovable, speak to the profound impression the lines leave on those who encounter them. Perhaps the enduring fascination of the Nazca lies not in the correctness of any single theory, but in the invitation to ponder a civilization that harmonized survival, ritual, and art in a landscape that seems, at first glance, inhospitable and unforgiving. Even the disappearance of the Nazca remains a question layered with complexity. Around the 8th century, evidence suggests the region suffered environmental stress, including drought and possible soil depletion, which may have contributed to the decline of Nazca society. Yet traces of their influence persisted in subsequent Andean cultures. Their irrigation techniques, artistic motifs, and sacred knowledge subtly woven into later civilizations. Did the Nazca vanish entirely, or did they transform, their cultural memory carried forward in ways we are only beginning to recognize? Walking among the lines today, one feels a profound sense of scale and silence. The desert wind sweeps across the plains, erasing footprints almost as quickly as they appear. leaving the geoglyphs intact, stubbornly resistant to time and human interference. Standing at the edge of a figure, it is impossible not to wonder, did the Nazca intend these works for humans, for the gods, or for eyes we cannot yet imagine? Were they maps, prayers, or cosmic symbols meant to connect the earth with the sky? The mystery of the Nazca lines endures precisely because they challenge our assumptions about what a civilization can achieve, and how much knowledge can vanish alongside a culture. They are a reminder that human ingenuity can be both practical and symbolic, earthly and transcendent. And as we step back from the desert, gazing at these sprawling designs etched into the sand, we are left with a quiet, persistent question. What truths lie hidden beneath the surface, waiting for someone to decode, and how much of the Nazca legacy remains unseen, whispering to us across the centuries? In the silence of the Peruvian desert, the past refuses to speak in full. It leaves us only with traces, patterns, and questions. And in that space between knowledge and mystery, the Nazca lines continue to invite contemplation, awe, and wonder. An unfinished story written across the earth itself. From the middle of a vast, shimmering lake, rising like a vision from mist and water, the city of Tenochtitlan once commanded the imagination of the ancient world. Canals crisscrossed the city like veins, carrying canoes laden with goods, people, and ritual offerings, while causeways stretched across the lake, connecting the island metropolis to distant shores. At its heart, the great Templo Mayor soared into the sky, a stepped pyramid crowned with temples of red and stone, where priests performed ceremonies that intertwined the cosmos, the sun, and human life itself. Standing here today, among the ruins buried beneath modern Mexico City, one can almost hear the echoes of a civilization both dazzling in its complexity and enigmatic in its sudden collapse. The Aztec Empire, which flourished in the 14th and 15th centuries, was a society built on ingenuity, ritual, and expansion. Its people mastered agriculture in the challenging environment of Lake Texcoco, constructing chinampas, floating gardens that allowed them to grow crops on the water itself. Markets bustled with merchants trading cacao, feathers, jade, and obsidian. Warriors moved with disciplined precision, extending the empire's reach across central Mexico. Yet, for all their apparent dominance, the Aztecs' power proved fragile in ways that remain deeply puzzling. How could an empire so organized, so rich, and so entrenched in its capital collapse in less than 2 decades under the arrival of a few hundred foreign soldiers? Historical accounts point to several factors. The arrival of Hernán Cortés and his Spanish forces in 1519 introduced firearms, cavalry, and strategies unknown to the Aztecs. Smallpox, along with other European diseases, spread through the population with devastating speed, killing thousands, including leaders, long before the final siege of Tenochtitlan. Yet even accounting for these external pressures, questions remain. How did a society that had weathered centuries of conquest, alliance shifts, and regional conflict fall so quickly? Was it simply the shock of foreign technology and disease? Or were there deeper fractures within Aztec society, political or spiritual, that hastened its demise? The rituals and beliefs of the Aztecs themselves add layers to the mystery. The empire was a civilization deeply attuned to cycles of time and cosmic order, guided by calendars that measured both solar years and ritual epochs. Human sacrifice, often sensationalized in modern accounts, was part of a complex cosmology in which the survival of the world itself was thought to depend on offerings to the gods. The scale and regularity of these ceremonies were staggering, yet they also hint at an understanding of the universe that was both practical and symbolic. Did these rituals serve solely religious or social purposes, or might they have encoded knowledge of astronomy, seasonal cycles, or environmental management in ways we have only begun to glimpse? Then there is Tenochtitlan itself, a city of immense ingenuity and sophistication. Raised on a swampy island, it featured aqueducts, reservoirs, bridges, and causeways that remain engineering marvels. The precision of construction, the organization of neighborhoods, the placement of temples and marketplaces, all suggest a civilization with a profound understanding of both human behavior and natural forces. Yet, much of this knowledge vanished when the Spanish razed the city, leaving only fragments buried beneath centuries of urban growth. Could the Aztecs have possessed other secrets, technologies, astronomical insights, or philosophical ideas that were lost entirely with the fall of their empire? Speculative theories naturally emerge when examining such a rapid and dramatic collapse. Some historians and archaeologists consider internal political tensions, noting that tributary cities and subject peoples may have grown resentful of Aztec dominance, subtly aiding the Spaniards. Others propose that natural disasters, droughts, floods, or volcanic activity may have strained the city's resources at critical moments. There are even whispers in the records of omens and celestial signs, interpreted by Aztec priests as warnings, suggesting a spiritual dimension to the empire's vulnerability. These possibilities, grounded in fragments of evidence, hint at a civilization aware of forces beyond mere human control, forces that may have contributed to its sudden disappearance. Artifacts and codices continue to tantalize scholars. Painted manuscripts, stone carvings, and sculpted effigies reveal a rich intellectual and artistic tradition. The Aztecs mapped their world with remarkable accuracy, yet many aspects of their knowledge remain partially indecipherable. How fully did they understand the natural world? Could some of their insights, encoded in ritual, art, or architecture, still be waiting to be uncovered? And if so, what truths about human civilization might they hold? Walking through the remains of Templo Mayor, or standing at the edges of the ancient canals, one feels a deep resonance with both ingenuity and impermanence. The Aztecs built a world of striking complexity, yet within a generation it was transformed beyond recognition. Their rise and fall leave us with more questions than answers about the fragility of empire, the transmission of knowledge, and the ways human societies interact with the forces of nature and the unknown. Perhaps the most profound mystery is not just the suddenness of their collapse, but the traces of brilliance and understanding that remain scattered across the landscape, buried in codices or embedded in ritual and architecture. What else did the Aztecs know, and what has been irrevocably lost? As we peer across the lake beds and ruins of their once great city, it is impossible not to wonder. Beyond the stones, the canals, and the fragments of culture, what deeper truths of this vanished civilization remain hidden, quietly waiting to be discovered? In the shadow of Tenochtitlan, the past refuses to yield its full story. The Aztecs, like the civilizations before them, remind us that the line between survival and disappearance is thin, and that mysteries of human achievement, ingenuity, and sudden loss persist, whispering, challenging, and inviting us to keep seeking answers in the spaces between history and enigma. As the sun begins its slow descent over the sandstone cliffs of the American Southwest, shadows stretch across narrow canyons, deepening the crevices where centuries of wind and erosion have carved the land. In these cliffs and mesas, cliff dwellings cling precariously to vertical rock faces, their sandstone walls blending seamlessly with the natural hues of the desert. Kivas, circular subterranean chambers, lie partially hidden, silent witnesses to rituals long forgotten. This is the land of the ancestral Puebloans, often called the Anasazi, a people whose ingenuity and vision transformed an unforgiving landscape into a network of thriving communities, only to vanish mysteriously, leaving behind these haunting stone cities. The ancestral Puebloans flourished roughly between 900 and 1300 CE, spreading across what is now the Four Corners region of the United States. They were master builders and farmers, cultivating corn, beans, and squash in arid soil and creating intricate irrigation systems to coax life from the desert. Their architecture is breathtaking, multi-storied apartment-like complexes, sometimes numbering hundreds of rooms, arranged with astonishing precision. Places such as Mesa Verde, Chaco Canyon, and Hovenweep reveal a level of planning and coordination that hints at a highly organized society. But as we walk among the remnants of these stone cities, one question persists. How could such a vibrant civilization disappear almost entirely, leaving no written records, no clear trace of conflict or conquest? Archaeologists point to several plausible explanations. Environmental change, including prolonged drought, may have stressed food production and water availability. Evidence suggests that deforestation and soil depletion may have further undermined agricultural stability. Social factors, such as resource competition or internal conflicts, could have prompted gradual migration from major centers to smaller, more sustainable settlements. Yet, none of these explanations fully capture the suddenness and scale of the abandonment, nor the care with which the ancestral Puebloans often left their homes. Unlike a city destroyed by war, many cliff dwellings and ceremonial sites appear intentionally vacated, with personal belongings removed and walls left intact. Why would a society abandon such extraordinary structures so deliberately, carrying with them a profound cultural memory that seems to have dissipated into silence? The ancestral Puebloans were also deeply attuned to the cosmos. Archaeologists have noted that many great houses and kivas align with solstices, lunar cycles, and star patterns, suggesting a sophisticated understanding of astronomy. At Chaco Canyon, massive structures like Pueblo Bonito are oriented with such precision that their walls mark solar and lunar events, echoing across centuries. What knowledge might have guided the construction of these monumental alignments, and what purposes did they serve beyond ritual or ceremonial observance? Could they have encoded a system of calendrical, spiritual, or even astronomical knowledge lost with the society itself? Artifacts recovered from these sites add another layer of mystery. Pottery, woven fabrics, and intricately carved tools reveal a culture of extraordinary skill and creativity. Petroglyphs etched into rock walls hint at symbolic thought and communication, yet their meanings remain elusive. Some suggest they depict celestial events, migrations, or spiritual visions. Others argue they might encode stories, historical events, or even maps, now indecipherable to us. These remnants speak of a society both deeply practical and profoundly reflective, one that engaged the world with intellect, artistry, and spirituality, yet ultimately vanished without a trace. Speculative theories have naturally emerged to explain this disappearance. Some propose that catastrophic events, droughts, flash floods, or epidemics, forced rapid migration. Others consider the possibility of cultural transformation, where communities dispersed and merged with neighboring peoples, leaving their monumental architecture behind. A few even suggest that unrecorded conflicts, perhaps with emerging groups or nomadic bands, may have influenced the abandonment. There are whispers, too, of ritual significance in the departure itself, of migrations guided by spiritual imperatives we can no longer comprehend. In every case, the evidence is tantalizing yet incomplete, leaving a profound sense of wonder. One of the most enigmatic aspects of the ancestral Puebloans is the scale and organization of Chaco Canyon, often called the center of the world by researchers. Its great houses, roads, and ceremonial structures hint at a society capable of mobilizing thousands of laborers, orchestrating long-distance trade networks, and maintaining complex social hierarchies. Yet, by the late 13th century, Chaco Canyon was largely abandoned, its massive buildings left to the desert winds. Why would a civilization capable of such feats disperse? Was it necessity, spiritual guidance, or forces beyond their understanding? Standing on the cliff edge at Mesa Verde, gazing down at the shadowed alcoves where families once lived, one cannot help but feel the weight of absence. The ancestral Puebloans leave behind a paradox. Their physical constructions endure, monumental and precise, yet the people themselves vanish from history, their voices carried only in the silent stones and cryptic symbols scattered across the landscape. What knowledge, rituals, or wisdom traveled with them into obscurity, and what has been lost forever? Perhaps the greatest mystery is not simply how the ancestral Puebloans disappeared, but what their legacy truly contains. Hidden in the patterns of roads, the alignments of buildings, and the subtleties of their art and architecture. The more we uncover, the more questions arise. Did they migrate gradually, carrying their culture into new regions, or were they compelled by forces we cannot fully measure? And if their civilization dissolved into neighboring societies, what remnants of their knowledge, beliefs, and innovations persist, quietly shaping the cultures that followed? In the stillness of the canyons, the past refuses to speak clearly. The ancestral Puebloans remain both tangible and elusive, a civilization whose stones, kivas, and roads endure as a testament to human ingenuity, yet whose disappearance invites endless speculation. And as we trace the contours of their cliff dwellings and ceremonial centers, we are left with a quiet, compelling question. What secrets, hidden in plain sight or buried beneath centuries of sand and stone, might still reveal the true story of a people who mastered the desert, only to vanish without a trace? Along the humid, fertile lowlands of the Gulf Coast of modern-day Mexico, where rivers wind lazily through dense tropical forests and the air hangs heavy with mist, there lie remnants of a civilization that flourished long before the rise of the Maya or the Aztec. Massive stone heads, some over 3 meters tall, emerge from the soil with enigmatic expressions, their features carved with a precision that still baffles archaeologists. These are the Olmecs, often called the mother culture of Mesoamerica, whose influence echoes across centuries, yet whose own story remains shrouded in mystery. The Olmec Civilization thrived roughly between 1500 and 400 BCE, centered in regions we now call Veracruz and Tabasco. They cultivated the fertile floodplains, developing early systems of agriculture that included maize, beans, and squash, and possibly pioneering the cultivation of cacao. Their settlements, like La Venta, San Lorenzo, and Tres Zapotes, reveal impressive ceremonial centers with massive earthen mounds, plazas, and platforms. But it is the colossal stone heads, each weighing several tons and transported from quarries miles away, that remain the most iconic and enigmatic symbols of Olmec ingenuity. Who were these figures meant to represent? Leaders, gods, or something entirely symbolic, known only to their creators? Scholars have pieced together much about Olmec society. They were sophisticated traders, connecting distant regions of Mesoamerica through networks that carried jade, obsidian, shells, and exotic feathers. Their art, intricate and often symbolic, depicts humans, jaguars, serpents, and hybrid creatures that blur the line between the natural and the supernatural. These motifs suggest that the Olmecs held complex spiritual beliefs, possibly forming the foundation for the religious and cosmological systems of later Mesoamerican civilizations. Yet, despite their innovations, the Olmecs vanished, leaving no written records, no chronologies, only stone, clay, and tantalizing traces of a culture that flourished and then disappeared. One of the most confounding aspects of the Olmec legacy is the scale and precision of their monumental constructions. The colossal heads alone required advanced knowledge of quarrying, transportation, and carving techniques. Some were moved over 50 kilometers from the basalt quarries of the Tuxtla Mountains to ceremonial centers, Yet no one knows exactly how the Olmecs accomplished these feats without the wheel or draft animals. Was it sheer human labor, ingenious use of levers and rollers, or a combination of techniques now lost to time? The very act of moving these massive stones implies organization, planning, and a society capable of mobilizing and sustaining a large workforce, a level of social complexity that seems remarkable for a civilization predating Maya cities by centuries. Then there are the enigmatic motifs that appear across Olmec sites. Jade figurines, intricately carved stelae, and painted ceramics depict creatures that are part jaguar, part human, part bird. Forms that suggest shamanic practices, visions, or spiritual transformations. Did these images encode religious knowledge, or do they speak to a broader understanding of human and animal relationships? Some researchers speculate that Olmec society may have had advanced knowledge of astronomy or mathematics, hinted at by the orientation of ceremonial sites and the recurring use of specific ratios in their constructions. Others suggest that Olmec art reflects a symbolic language, a system of communication we have only begun to glimpse. Speculative interpretations naturally arise in the face of such mysteries. Some suggest that the Olmecs may have been influenced by unknown or lost civilizations, their knowledge passed down through generations before being absorbed or forgotten. Others propose that the colossal heads and other monumental works functioned as markers of power, spirituality, or territorial claim, visible statements of authority and belief in a time when literacy did not yet exist. And some fringe theories, while unprovable, suggest that the Olmecs' advanced understanding of engineering, hydrology, and ceremonial planning hints at knowledge or techniques now lost, knowledge that may have shaped the civilizations that followed. The sudden decline of the Olmec civilization remains another puzzle. By around 400 BCE, the great centers of San Lorenzo and La Venta were largely abandoned. Whether this was due to environmental change, such as river shifts, flooding, or soil exhaustion, or internal social upheaval, the truth is uncertain. Unlike later Mesoamerican societies, the Olmecs left no codices or written histories to explain their trajectory. What compelled such a thriving, innovative society to disperse, leaving behind only monumental stone and the whispers of influence on future civilizations? Walking among the remnants today, the Olmecs speak through their silence. The colossal heads gaze impassively from plazas, the mounds rise against the jungle canopy, and the intricate figurines convey stories that are just out of reach. Their achievements suggest a civilization that was not only practical but profoundly symbolic, capable of shaping both the natural and spiritual worlds. Yet, the ultimate story, the reasons for their rise, their extraordinary accomplishments, and their sudden disappearance, remains tantalizingly incomplete. Perhaps the most compelling mystery is not simply how the Olmecs vanished, but what knowledge, rituals, or cultural wisdom was lost with them. How deeply did they understand the world around them, and what secrets might their art, architecture, and iconography still hold? As we trace the contours of basalt heads, walk the ceremonial plazas, and study the delicate carvings that survived centuries of climate and conquest, one is left with a question that lingers in the humid air of the Gulf Coast. What truths, hidden in plain sight or buried beneath centuries of soil and jungle, might yet reveal the full story of a civilization that shaped Mesoamerica long before the rise of empires, and then simply disappeared? In the shadow of their monuments, the Olmecs remain a civilization of profound ingenuity and enduring mystery, their silence inviting reflection, speculation, and a recognition that history is often only partially written. And in that silence, we are left with a single haunting question. How much of the past, encoded in stone and symbol, still waits to be discovered? Rising from the arid plains of Peru's Casma Valley, the ruins of Cerro confront the observer with an unsettling presence. Massive stone walls, etched with reliefs of warriors, dismembered bodies, and strange ceremonial scenes, extend across terraces that ripple gently into the surrounding desert. The sun casts sharp shadows across the carvings, emphasizing the stark expressions frozen into stone for over 3,000 years. Walking among these remnants, one cannot help but sense a culture that was at once sophisticated, ritualistic, and deeply enigmatic, a society whose stories survive only in the silent language of stone. The Cerro culture thrived around 1600 to 1000 BCE, predating even the better-known civilizations of the Andes. Its people constructed ceremonial centers, plazas, and fortified structures, demonstrating a high level of architectural skill for the period. But it is the intricate stone reliefs that capture the imagination and provoke unease. Each wall seems to tell a story, yet one that is both explicit and incomprehensible. Figures are carved with meticulous detail, warriors brandishing weapons, captives bound or dismembered, and enigmatic motifs that blend the human and the abstract. Who were these figures meant to represent, and what events or beliefs do they encode? Archaeologists have long debated the purpose of Cerro imagery. Some suggest it served as a display of power, a warning to rivals, or a testament to military conquest. Others interpret the reliefs as ritualistic, a reflection of ceremonial practices that may have involved sacrifice or ancestor worship. Evidence of surrounding plazas and ceremonial spaces lends weight to the idea that the culture was deeply invested in religious and societal order. Yet, despite centuries of study, no definitive interpretation has emerged, leaving the meaning of these carvings tantalizingly out of reach. The sheer audacity of the construction speaks to an advanced understanding of both labor organization and stonework. Monolithic blocks were quarried, transported, and positioned with remarkable precision, forming walls that have endured millennia of earthquakes, wind, and erosion. What tools, techniques, or communal coordination allowed a society of this age to achieve such feats? And why dedicate such effort to carvings that appear to celebrate both life and death in ways that remain mysterious to this day? The carvings themselves are unsettling, not only for their violence, but also for their symbolism. Some researchers see depictions of duality, life and death, human and divine, order and chaos. There are suggestions that the motifs may align with solar or lunar events, hinting at cosmological awareness embedded within the ceremonial complex. Could the reliefs encode knowledge of time, celestial cycles, or even agricultural patterns critical to survival in a challenging landscape? Or were they intended primarily as spiritual expressions, a dialogue between the people and forces beyond human understanding? Speculative interpretations naturally emerge in the shadow of such enigma. Some propose that Cerro reflects an early warrior culture, where ritualized violence served to reinforce social cohesion and hierarchy. Others suggest shamanic influence, proposing that the carvings represent visions or mythologies accessible only to spiritual leaders. A few fringe theories even hint at lost knowledge of advanced astronomical observation or symbolic communication, though such ideas remain highly speculative. What is clear, however, is that the culture's sophistication, its ability to combine architecture, art, ritual, and possibly cosmology, signals a society far more complex than previously imagined for its era. The sudden disappearance of Cerro culture is as mysterious as its art. By around 1000 BCE, the ceremonial centers were largely abandoned. Environmental changes, such as river shifts or prolonged drought, may have stressed agriculture and resources. Internal social pressures or conflicts could also have contributed. Yet the suddenness and precision of the site's abandonment, coupled with the deliberate preservation of monumental reliefs, suggest that the story of Cerro was not simply erased, but intentionally left for posterity? What messages or warnings might they have hoped to leave behind, carved in stone for millennia? Standing amid the terraces today, one is struck by the tension between permanence and impermanence. The stone reliefs endure, defying centuries of erosion, while the people who carved them have vanished, leaving only echoes in the desert wind. The imagery invites contemplation of power, mortality, ritual, and the human urge to communicate across time. What rituals did the Chimusechin culture perform in these spaces, and what truths did they see in life and death that remain hidden to us now? Perhaps the greatest mystery is not the violence depicted, but the knowledge embedded within the site. Did the carvings carry practical guidance, spiritual wisdom, or coded cosmological insight? And if so, what remains buried beneath layers of earth, sand, and time, waiting to reveal itself? Walking through the terraces and observing the reliefs in the shifting light, one is left with a profound, lingering question. How much of the past has been deliberately preserved? How much lost? And what secrets might still be hidden, quietly enduring in the stones of Chimusechin? In the stillness of the Casma Valley, the past refuses to surrender fully. The Chimusechin culture stands as a silent witness to human ingenuity, ritual complexity, and the fragility of civilization. And in that silence, we are left not with answers, but with the compelling sense that the story of these ancient people and the knowledge they encoded remains unfinished, waiting for the curious, patient, and observant to discover what has survived through millennia of mystery. Along the rugged coast of what is now northern Chile, where the Pacific Ocean crashes relentlessly against rocky cliffs and winds sweep the desert sands inland, lies the land of one of the oldest known cultures in the Americas, the Chinchorro. From the air, the coastline stretches in an unbroken ribbon of ochre and gray, dotted with shallow estuaries and tidal flats that once teemed with fish, mollusks, and marine birds. It is here, along this harsh and unforgiving desert shore, that the Chinchorro people carved out a life, mastering the ocean and the arid land in ways that remain astonishing even to modern eyes. Yet their legacy is not built in stone or architecture, as with many other ancient cultures, but in a far more intimate and enigmatic medium, the human body itself. The Chinchorro culture thrived along this Pacific coast as early as 7000 BCE, long before the rise of the Olmecs, the Inca, or the great civilizations of Mesoamerica. Archaeologists have found evidence of well-organized fishing communities, subsisting on a diet rich in fish, shellfish, and other marine resources. They used sophisticated tools made from bone, stone, and shell, and crafted nets and harpoons designed for efficiency in hunting the abundant sea life. These early humans were survivors in the truest sense, adapting to one of the driest deserts on Earth while maintaining rich, complex communities along the shoreline. Yet what truly sets the Chinchorro apart is their practice of mummification, a tradition that predates the Egyptians by thousands of years. The Chinchorro did not mummify the elite or the powerful. Rather, they mummified everyone, from infants to elders, without discrimination. Their bodies were preserved through meticulous techniques involving disassembly, treatment with clay or ash, and reassembly, often painted and adorned in ways that suggest ritual significance. The care with which they prepared their dead speaks to a worldview deeply concerned with life, death, and perhaps the continuity of the human soul. Why did a society invest so much labor and precision into the preservation of the dead, and what did it reveal about their understanding of existence? The mummies themselves are extraordinary. Faces often bear serene expressions, the bodies carefully reconstructed with clay masks or wooden supports, and some even display intricate hair arrangements or decorative elements. Unlike later cultures, such as the Egyptians, The Chinchorro seem to have mummified not for the afterlife of rulers, but as an act of cultural, perhaps even spiritual, necessity. What belief drove this practice? Was it a form of ancestor veneration, a method of connecting the living with the dead, or an early attempt to understand and confront mortality itself? Archaeologists have noted shifts in mummification techniques over time, suggesting a continuous evolution of ritual knowledge. Early black mummies involved complete removal of soft tissue and replacement with organic or mineral substances, while later red mummies show simpler techniques, with the body treated and painted without full disassembly. Some speculate that these changes reflect social or environmental shifts, yet the deeper meaning remains elusive. Why did such a complex and labor-intensive practice emerge here, in one of the harshest landscapes on the planet? And why did it persist for thousands of years before gradually disappearing? The Chinchorro were not monumental builders, and they left no vast cities or pyramids to mark their passage. Yet in many ways, their legacy is more intimate and profound than that of stone and brick. The mummies serve as a bridge across millennia, conveying both the fragility and resilience of human life. They reveal a people who lived in constant dialogue with their environment, understanding the rhythms of the ocean, the deserts, and the cycles of life and death. Their artistry, encoded in the careful preparation of each body, hints at symbolic systems and cultural values that are tantalizing but largely undecipherable. What stories did these bodies tell to the living, and what messages did the Chinchorro intend for posterity? Speculative theories naturally arise when considering the Chinchorro's practices and their disappearance. Some researchers argue that environmental changes, such as fluctuations in ocean currents, resource depletion, or rising aridity, may have forced the communities to disperse or change their way of life. Others suggest social factors, including shifts in ritual practices, population dynamics, or cultural assimilation with neighboring groups, could have led to the eventual abandonment of mummification. Yet another layer of speculation revolves around the spiritual or cosmological significance of their work. Did the Chinchorro perceive death as a transformation rather than an end? Were the mummies intended to anchor the community spiritually, to maintain a continuity of life beyond the physical? What adds further intrigue is the sheer scale of this practice over millennia. Thousands of mummies have been uncovered, some showing consistent techniques and symbolic elements across generations. The longevity and uniformity of these practices suggest a highly organized society with both technical knowledge and deeply ingrained cultural continuity. How did such knowledge transfer over thousands of years, through generations and environmental challenges, without written language? And why did this culture, so rich in ritual and adaptation, eventually vanish, leaving behind only traces in clay, ash, and bone? The Chinchorro mummies also invite broader questions about the nature of memory and cultural survival. Unlike civilizations whose ruins and artifacts dominate landscapes, the Chinchorro are remembered primarily through the people they preserved. Their mummies form a dialogue across time, silent yet eloquent, intimate yet profound. They remind us that the measure of a civilization is not always in its monuments or empires, but in the care, knowledge, and values it preserves. How many other societies might have existed, leaving no trace except through practices that survived in hidden, fragile forms? Standing on the wind-swept coastline, overlooking the Pacific's relentless surf and imagining the lives of the Chinchorro fishing communities, one is struck by a paradox. These were people intimately connected to their environment, masters of survival, yet their disappearance remains unresolved. What caused this civilization, so technologically and spiritually advanced in its own way, to fade into obscurity? Was it the slow pressure of climate, the erosion of social structures, or forces entirely unknown to us today? Perhaps the ultimate mystery lies in the very act of preservation. The Chinchorro mummies are not monuments to power, conquest, or wealth, but to life itself, every individual valued, every life commemorated. And yet, the civilization that revered life in this way has itself disappeared, leaving behind only questions. What truths about human adaptation, mortality, and cultural continuity might still lie hidden along this ancient coast, waiting for someone to piece together the full story? In the silence of the Atacama coast, the Chinchorro remain a civilization both intimate and distant, a reminder that the past is often preserved not in grand architecture, but in the care, knowledge, and rituals that connect humans to one another and to the world around them. And as we gaze at the wind-shaped cliffs, the ancient estuaries, and the mummies that have endured millennia, we are left with a haunting, open question. How much more of our shared history remains hidden, preserved in ways we have yet to comprehend, quietly waiting for the curious to discover it? Nestled in the rolling highlands of Costa Rica, where mist clings to verdant hillsides and rivers carve their way through dense tropical forests, lies Guayabo, a place that, even today, exudes an air of quiet enigma. From a distance, the ruins appear as low terraces and stone foundations, seamlessly blending into the landscape. But as one approaches, the intricacy of its construction becomes evident. Paved roads, aqueducts, circular and rectangular structures, and carefully arranged mounds hint at a civilization that combined architectural skill, societal organization, and a deep understanding of their environment. Guayabo stands not only as a monument to human ingenuity, but also as a puzzle, a civilization that thrived and then vanished, leaving behind stones and whispers in the mist. The Guayabo culture flourished between roughly 1000 BCE and 1400 CE, making it one of the most significant pre-Columbian sites in Costa Rica. Unlike the monumental pyramids of Mesoamerica or the cliff dwellings of the ancestral Puebloans, Guayabo is understated, its genius revealed not in towering structures, but in the subtle orchestration of its landscape. Paved stone roads connect terraces and plazas across the hills, suggesting careful urban planning, and evidence of reservoirs and aqueducts points to advanced hydraulic engineering. The society's mastery over water management is particularly remarkable, given the region's steep slopes and heavy rains. How did a people living in what we often consider a remote, tropical highland develop such sophisticated techniques, and what motivated the meticulous care evident in every pathway and stone structure? Archaeological studies suggest that Guayabo was home to a population numbering in the thousands. Circular dwellings indicate domestic areas, while larger rectangular buildings may have served ceremonial or administrative purposes. The site also includes stone carvings, abstract patterns, animal figures, and enigmatic symbols whose meaning remains uncertain. These carvings, though not as famous as the Olmec heads or Nazca geoglyphs, carry a weight of mystery. Were they markers of spiritual significance, territorial claims, or records of historical events? Their precise arrangement suggests intent beyond decoration, yet the messages they were meant to convey are lost in the mists of time. One of the most intriguing features of Guayabo is its road network. Some roads are paved with carefully selected stones, bordered by drainage channels, and appear to connect distant parts of the site with remarkable precision. The alignment of certain roads and plazas suggests awareness of celestial or topographical features, though the full extent of this planning is still under investigation. Could these pathways have had ritual significance, perhaps guiding processions during ceremonies, or were they practical routes facilitating trade and communication across the highlands? The answer remains uncertain, and the roads themselves seem to beckon us to consider the daily lives of the people who built and traveled them. Guayabo's water management is another testament to the culture's ingenuity. Reservoirs, aqueducts, and channels carved into stone indicate not only technical knowledge, but an understanding of environmental balance. The culture thrived in a region prone to heavy rainfall, erosion, and steep slopes, yet they constructed systems that directed water efficiently, preventing floods and ensuring steady supply for domestic and agricultural use. This level of hydraulic planning implies a society capable of long-term thinking, coordination, and adaptation, an intelligence that seems both practical and visionary. Yet, despite this mastery, the civilization disappeared, leaving behind only stone traces and unanswered questions. Speculative theories about the Guayabo culture abound, though evidence remains scarce. Some researchers propose that environmental shifts, perhaps prolonged droughts or soil depletion, gradually undermined agriculture and settlement sustainability. Others suggest social or political factors, internal conflicts, shifts in trade networks, or migrations that dispersed the population over time. More enigmatic are theories that propose ritual or spiritual motivations. Could the culture have intentionally abandoned parts of the site to create sacred spaces, or to align with cosmological cycles we no longer understand? Might the carvings and layout of Guayabo encode knowledge that was meant to persist beyond the lifespan of the society itself? The site also raises questions about the connections between Guayabo and other contemporary civilizations. Unlike the Olmecs, the Inca, or the Maya, Guayabo remains largely isolated in scholarly discussion. Yet some evidence suggests contact with distant communities through trade networks, cultural exchange, or shared ritual knowledge. Stone tools, ceramics, and decorative motifs hint at influences or exchanges that are not yet fully documented. Could Guayabo have played a central role in regional networks of commerce, spirituality, or knowledge, an unsung hub of pre-Columbian civilization in Central America? Walking among the terraces and pathways, one senses the intimate relationship between people and landscape. The builders of Guayabo understood the contours of the hills, the flow of water, and the seasonal rhythms of the environment. Their structures reflect an awareness of both utility and harmony. Every stone, every channel, every plaza seems deliberately placed. Yet, despite this ingenuity, the population vanished, leaving a ghost city behind. What prompted their departure? Was it environmental necessity, societal collapse, spiritual mandate, or forces entirely unknown to us today? The disappearance of Guayabo mirrors the fate of many ancient American civilizations, from the Chinchorro along the arid northern coast of Chile to the ancestral Puebloans in the American Southwest. There is a haunting continuity to these vanishing societies. Communities capable of remarkable ingenuity, cultural richness, and environmental mastery, yet ultimately leaving only fragments behind. And in each fragment, we glimpse not just the lives they led, but also the mysteries they carried with them into the unknown. Perhaps the most compelling aspect of Guayabo is the sense that it was deliberately constructed as a place of both permanence and transition. Roads and aqueducts hint at daily life and organization. Terraces and plazas suggest ceremonial observance and social structure. Carvings imply symbolic or spiritual consciousness. The civilization was sophisticated, deeply aware of its surroundings, and remarkably durable, yet it vanished. And in that disappearance lies the ultimate mystery. What knowledge, traditions, or understandings were lost with them, buried beneath centuries of growth, erosion, and silence? Standing on the highest terrace, gazing across the forested hills and the winding rivers below, one cannot help but reflect on the fragility of human achievement. Guayabo invites us to imagine not just the people who walked these roads, built these aqueducts, and carved these stones, but also the reasons why all traces of their daily life faded, leaving a civilization that seems at once monumental and ephemeral. How did such a capable society, adept at manipulating landscape, managing water, and organizing community life, simply disappear from history? And what secrets about human resilience, adaptation, and the fragility of civilization might still be hidden in the hills, waiting to be discovered? In the quiet highlands of Costa Rica, Guayabo remains a testament to ingenuity, endurance, and the enigmatic nature of human history. Its terraces, aqueducts, roads, and carvings speak across millennia, inviting curiosity, reflection, and awe. And as we trace the paths of those long-gone inhabitants, we are left with a profound, open-ended question. Beyond the stones and the terraces, what remains of their knowledge, their stories, and their understanding of the world, and how much is still waiting, patiently, to be uncovered by those who dare to look?